Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're coming to you live from Southern California. It is Monday. I'm trying to see what date it is. It is the 22nd of 2021. So it's a lot of twos in the in the date today. We are live this morning for a full hour with you talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. So excited to be here with you to bring that to you. It's warm in my room today. I don't know why. Spring is in the air here in Los Angeles, and it's great. Although I know that monsoons are coming, but for the moment, it feels this is my favorite time of the year to live in Los Angeles because you guys are shoveling in different places around the world, or you're, way south of the equator, and it's hot where you are because you're in summer. And in Los Angeles, it is the perfect spring with things blooming, which means that there's a little bit of, I'm going to be sneezing. Excuse me. Okay. Yeah, a little bit of that. I beg your pardon. And I didn't even use my shoulder. I'm in here alone. So I will make sure that I mop everything down. But so happy and thrilled to be here with you and have this opportunity. You know that I like to start out by telling you that we're live, we're interactive. We want to hear from you. Right now, we are live on the big four. That is YouTube, Facebook Live, Periscope, and Twitter. You can be watching us live right there, but we're also live on a bunch of other sites as well. Traven is showing them to you on the screen, but you know where you're watching from. Now, if you're watching from the big four, it's super easy. All you have to do is write into the chat and it directly aggregates and shows up here on our screen. If you're watching live someplace else, you may look at that Africa TV and Vaughn Live. Thrilled that you guys are watching us. Good morning, Amanda. Amanda's watching D Live. I love there. Happy Monday to Amanda and her blue hearts. We absolutely love it when we see your blue hearts because it means you're in the house, right? Yes, that was actually the Humpty. My attempt at a Humpty. Okay, Josephine, good morning to you as well. So thrilled that you're here. So we love to hear from you. Now, if you're watching on a platform that doesn't directly aggregate, or you're watching us when we're recorded, because we're a podcast on all major podcast servers. In fact, I think we're on ones that aren't major. In fact, if you find that we're not where you get your podcast, please let us know because we'd like to be there. We very, very much want to be on as many screens as possible, free to you as often as possible. So please keep us posted on that. Traven, our fabulous producer, is so incredible. And if you tell him a place where you watch your podcast, he'll chase it down and get us there. He's really good that way. Oh my gosh, Josephine says she has 3 autistic grandsons. Congratulations, Josephine. You know that t-shirt that they make for a lot of people who have autism strong in their family? They say, if you think my hands are full, you should see my heart, right? So I'm sure that you've got full hands and a full heart, Josephine. Please write in and tell us if there's any question that you have, which leads me to my next thing, that normally on the show, we have tons of experts. And those of you who tuned in last week, you know what we had scheduled was that Bonnie Yates was going to be here and she was going to do a whole masterclass on filing due process, again, by yourself without a lawyer. And we're still going to do that, just not today. And I apologize to you for that. And Bonnie apologizes, but she has, she needed to be, I don't know whether it was in court or mediation, but she needed to be someplace for a client. And you know how that is. That has to come first. So Bonnie hopefully will be with us next week and we will do that. But not here today, but we have lots of experts that are always here on the show. I do like to remind you that I am not one of them. I am someone who's been hosting shows from a journalistic point of view and interviewing people about autism for, just like more than a decade now. So I like to say that I have an informed opinion, but that is what it is. I'm not an expert, but if you're interested in my opinions about things, you are happy to write in, and you're stuck with me today. So we're going to talk about a whole host of things, but I'm really interested in getting your questions today. But remember, it's just my informed opinion. What are my credentials to be here? There, like a lot of you, I am the mother of an individual who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. And my son is 17 and a half now. He's about to be 18. And I'm freaking out, folks, totally freaking out, but for all the right reasons. In fact, last night I was on the phone with a dear friend, and they were saying, if somebody had told you at any point that you would be where you are today, I said I would have fallen to the floor on my knees and wept and cried and been so grateful. And don't kid yourself, sometimes I do. We have so many other things to do. It's not my, every minute of every day. But my son is graduating from high school in just a couple of months. He's applied to 13 colleges. And for those of you who keeping score, we've only gotten 3 letters so far, and they've all been acceptances. So the game is on. The game is afoot, as they say. We still have 10 colleges to hear from, and then decisions will be made. Can you even imagine? And further, I want to say, for those of you who don't know my story, my son was considered nonverbal. He could still utter sounds, and there were probably 3 words that he would still say, but they weren't for communication. Like, he would just sit in a corner and say dog, 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 dog for 3 hours with no pause, but he wasn't talking about a dog. He wasn't pointing to a dog. He didn't want a dog. It was just a perseveration that he would make. But still, that's a really good sign, because it means that he had the ability to vocally, and even in those early days when they would say to me, he's going to speak, and I would say, how do you know? And they would say, because he's uttering sounds and we can shape that into language. And they did. And it continued to be a problem for him to express his thoughts through writing, because handwriting was an issue, but also expressing his thoughts through writing seemed like that was going to be a problem. And my son has been accepted to a very prestigious program for playwriting and screenwriting, because he has become a very prolific writer. So all things in this universe, like I would never have guessed that, but okay. Okay, so this is the space from which I come to you, having been on that journey. It is not your journey. It is not anybody else's journey, just like your journey is not like anybody else's. So you know what I say, we hold hands, right? Si se puede, we can do this together. But please don't think that that I ever think that my experience is your experience. I'm very respectful of the fact that we all have our own journeys, and our kiddos and we have our own journeys, which brings me to my last point before we get into the jargon. We do this show on Autism Live, and our whole mission is to provide information and inspiration to the larger autism community. And what do I mean when I say that? That has to start with individuals who are on the spectrum. It has to start with the love and the respect and the listening of those individuals. And I'm very serious about that. That is the place from which we have to stem. But I also then include everyone who loves those individuals, because I know together we can help to fight the good fight to make sure that those individuals have the respect, the employment, the right to love who they love, the right to wear what they want to wear, all the things in life that will make them happy. Not necessarily us, but will make them happy. And anybody who's on that team, I welcome you to this conversation, to be here with our viewers who are on the spectrum, so that we can help to make sure that we support and give them the dignity and the right that they deserve. So thrilled that we get an opportunity. I feel privileged that we get to do that, but always want to be mindful of the respect of who and why, what is the core of our purpose here? Yes? Okay. Having said that, it is time for the jargon of the day. Uh, so every Monday and Thursday anyway, we like to give you a term, and then we give you the actual meaning of the term, and then I make fun of it whenever possible. Because really there's nothing else you can do with it, right? So then we give you the working definition, and I try to put it into context for you so that you'll have a beginning understanding of it. But it's really just about having a beginning understanding of it, because these jargon terms are so overwhelming sometimes, right? But when you do start to understand them, they will save you time, energy, money, and get you to progress faster. And that's the reason why we go through this. Saying good morning to our journey, Cameron's new life, and also saying good morning to Nasser. Excuse me. So let's take a look at today's jargon term. It's one of my favorites, intraverbal. And if you had said to me 16 years ago that someday I would be sitting and talking on camera and saying interverbal, it's one of my favorite jargon terms, I would have asked to take your temperature. I would have been convinced that you had lost your mind, because I didn't know what an interverbal was and had no desire to be talking about it on camera. But here we are, and I'm happy that we're here, because when life gives you lemons, make the best lemonade, right? And interverbals help you to make the best lemonade. So let's take a look at what our actual definition of interverbal is. Let's see what we can poke fun of here, shall we? Intraverbal, an elementary verbal operant. Don't you just love it when they call something a verbal operant? An elementary verbal operant involving a response that is evoked by a verbal discriminative stimulus that does not have point-to-point correspondence with that verbal stimulus. Ladies and gentlemen, that clears it all up for all of us, doesn't it? Like, I don't know about you, but I could write a term paper on this right now, having read that definition. Not. Right? Right? If you don't know what an interverbal is, you probably don't know what a verbal operant is. You probably don't know what a discriminative stimulus is. And what the heck is a point-to-point correspondence with a verbal stimulus? Nah, 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 nah. This is a crazy person's definition. It's actually an expert, again, person who likes jargon definition. So not helpful to us who don't have degrees in psychology. Let's look at what the working definition is, because I'm guaranteeing you this is something really important. Interverbal is something somebody says in response to the language of another person. It's conversation, conversational language. So we've been very slowly, sneakily doing the verbal operants with you, right? So we did a coex a couple of weeks ago where we talked about the fact that, I say something and you echo it, right? That's echoics. We talked about manding, which is that I request something. And remember, these are not necessarily all vocal, because I need to do vocal to do a coex, but for manding, I can point. And I can point to the water, and then you know that I want the water. Then last week we talked about tacting. The tacting is when I notice something in the environment and I label it for the purpose of letting you know, so that we create a triangle of information. That I say balloon, because I want you to look at the balloon and I want us to experience the balloon together. That's tacting. And tacting is important because a lot of times what you guys will write into me and you'll say, well, my child is getting speech from a speech and language pathologist, but I don't know why. My child is 11 and we haven't gotten to conversation. My child has like 300 words they can label and say, but what's the mystery? How do I get to conversation? Voila, it's the verbal operants. So because we want to get all of these in place, because when we have them in place, we are going to get to interverbals. If we know how to mand and request things that we want, if we are tacting on our own, then we are ready to move on to interverbals. And there are other skills that we have to build before we get to interverbals. But an interverbal is that I've taught you what an apple is. I showed you, and I expressively and receptively, I showed it to you in 2 dimensions. I showed you an actual apple. I showed you many different kinds of apples so that you would generalize what an apple is, right? So you firmly have apple in your mind, and then I put an apple someplace like on top of your iPad, and you signed or you gestured or whatever, you pointed to a card, or you said out loud apple without me prompting you, right? So now we get to interverbals, where I can say to you, what do you want for lunch? Which doesn't, and I'm not pointing to an apple. I don't have an apple with me. There's, no apple. I'm not holding up a picture of an apple, but I say, what do you want for lunch? And a pure interverbal is that you say apple. So that's why it said no point to point correspondence. So you were able to go through the files in your mind and think about, what do I want for lunch? And you were able to say apple. Now, how do you get there? How do you get to the point where somebody can do an interverbal? Well, first you got to prompt it, right? So I teach you apple, and I teach it in all the ways that we just talked about, right? And I put the apple on my head so that you go apple, right? So that it's out of the ordinary to get you to tact. I put it on your computer so that you're tacting it, right? And I show you different color apples. And then I say to you, what do you want for lunch? And I might, hold up two pictures, one of an apple and one of a banana, and let you pick, right? And when you pick, then I say, what is it? And you say, apple. Great, you get an apple for lunch, right? We turned it into a mand, right? But the question was still there. And I'm going to build that skill in you so that eventually when I say, what do you want for lunch? And I might open the refrigerator to refresh your memory, still not pure interverbal, but eventually I'm going to say to you, what do you want for lunch? And if apples are really the thing you like, you're going to say apple. Right? And then from there, I'm going to build in other questions so that we just keep adding, just like when we added the mand in the beginning, the child says cookie. Well, really, in the beginning, the child says good, right? But they're pointing at the cookie. We give them the cookie. Then they say k, right? And we give them the cookie. And then we say cookie, right? You get cookie. And now, so keep moving the goalpost, right? Then when we get cookie, then we start saying more cookie or want cookie. And then I want cookie. And then I want cookie, please. Right? And so that we're building the sentence. It's always like the pizza dough. We're taking it and we're stretching it. And we always are going to get a little bit of shrink back, but then we stretch it further and it goes out further. Right? Same thing with getting to the interverbal. We want to get to the conversation. Now, if you're curious as to, you're like, okay, this is all fascinating and I've never heard this before and I didn't know that's how you taught that. How can I learn more? I want to give you two resources. One of them, and the people from these resources are going to be on the show on Thursday. It's something we talk about endlessly on the show. There's two products that you have access to, that everybody who has the internet has access to. One of them is IBT, which is the Institute for Behavioral Training. So they teach the how, like how do you teach these things? So you can find them at ibehavioraltraining.com. If you go there, you'll see that it's a website and there's 3 different categories of trainings that they do. Thank you, Traven, for putting it up there. There's 3 different trainings that they segments. So it's like know your audience. So they have a segment that's just for professionals. So people who are already working in the field of ABA, they can do their continuing education credits there, right? And learn more about things. It's going to be jargon intensive there. Then there's a category that's just for educators, for teachers, and the topics are about, how to set your classroom up, how to deal with fire drills with individuals on the autism spectrum, right? And then there's a third category that's just for parents. And it means that it's a lot of the same topics, but the jargon has been thinned down and it's experts explaining it with the expectation that you don't, like I'm doing here, you don't have a degree in psychology. Here's the great news is you can do any of them that you want. If you're a really motivated parent and you're like, I've been watching the jargon for a couple of years, Shannon, I got the jargon. I'd like some more jargon. I want to know what the experts know, then feel free to order the ones in the expert column. Or if you want to be able to help and support your teacher and you just think that they don't have the time to watch the video, but you want to give them suggestions, go watch the teacher ones, right? They don't close you. You don't have to have a BCBA to take the expert ones, is what I'm saying. You don't have to give a teacher credential to prove that you want to take the teacher ones. So all that's available. What are they? It's not a pamphlet. What it is a video. They're different lengths. They're different times, and they sell them by the module. So you might go in and say, I want to do the module on teaching language. Now, they range in price. I think that the least expensive one is $7.50. And I believe, don't quote me, but I think the most expensive one is $32. So they're in the neighborhood of what it would cost to get a book to read. But who has time to read books while you're doing intervention? So what you do is you watch the video and you can rewatch it and rewatch it. When you buy it, you get it for a certain number of months, and you get to choose how many months you want it for. Every week we feature on the show, they offer free things. And so I encourage you to go there, try the free thing for this week in the educator or the parent column. And Traven, do you have their phone number that you can pop up real quick? Because that's the way that you're going to reach them to get the free stuff. But I really highly encourage you. These are great things to do. Traven's got the phone number right there, 877-975-4559. Just call them and say, I was watching Autism Live. Can I get the free training for the parents or the teachers this week? And they'll help you out with that. Now, the other thing that now Skills and IBT, they were together at one point, then they were separate entities. Now they're back together again. So Skills is this amazing resource, and it gives you the actual lessons and helps you to build them in an order. You can customize them, but it says, here's the order that we've put them in after years and years of experience. The Skills curriculum is the curriculum that my son had when he was going through treatment with the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So it's so much more than a curriculum. Other people will say to me, oh, well, I'm doing VB MAP. Right. The thing about Skills is that it does what a bunch of other products do. So it assesses your child. You have to answer questions, but it's assessing your child. It gives you treatment recommendations, a pool of lessons that are appropriate for your child. It also gives you the ability to build a behavior intervention plan. And there's nothing else that does that. And then it tracks your child's progress. So the two together are great. The Skills is a subscription base, so there's a monthly cost for it. But if you call that number, they will give you 10% off of that monthly if you just say that you watched about it on Autism Live. So there you go. And so if you want to learn more about these things and how to do them, you absolutely can. And they're going to be with us on Thursday because we talk about them so much. We were like, let's get them on the show. So moving on, we always have a question of the day. And our question today, what new skill have you acquired since COVID? And I'm so terribly interested to hear this because, we're almost a year in. And for those of you in Italy, you are a year in, right? I want to know, what have you learned? Some of you I know are probably baking sourdough bread. I did not pick up that skill. I have a ukulele that I intended to learn how to play. I think I know one chord and not well, but there are many other things that I have learned how to do since COVID, a lot of them having to do with gardening. But I'm interested to, one of the most fun things that I learned how to do is I learned how to put together one of those puzzle lamps, which is no small thing. It took me 2 months to be able to do it. And now I don't know if I'll remember how to do it, but there are these little pieces of plastic and then you have to fit them together and it makes a ball. Super duper fun. So that's what I learned how to do in COVID. So what have you guys learned how to do? Somebody said I learned who my true supporters are. Yeah. We got a bunch of questions coming in. So I'm going to get to those in just a second. So write in and tell us what new skill you learned in COVID. I have acquired a diving coach license. Well, that's so fascinating. Congratulations. That's wonderful. I never did learn how to dive. Diving is a thing that has evaded me. So that's so cool that you know how to do that. That is spectacular. Who else learned a new skill in COVID? Hopefully in a year you learned something. Think about it. I'm learning how to structure my day because I don't really know how to do that. I'm just being honest. Okay, we also have a topic for this week. Let's move on to what the topic of the week is, but please send in what you learned. But this is one of my favorite topics, is because this to me is at least half the battle, right? Is asking the right questions. I recently was talking to somebody about I'm really hot on this new old thing that I knew about once upon a time and talked about once upon a time on the show and stopped talking about it. Every single state in the United States has a 211, either a phone number or a website or both. So you can pick up your house phone and dial 211 and you connect, or you go to a website and put in 211 in your state and you will find a website. And it's a website just with resources for everything. Oh, somebody else says I accomplished teaching skills. Wonderful. Congratulations. But on the 211 site, it gives you a host of things that are helpful and supportive. Like there's a tab on most of them that says rent assistance or, food assistance or all kinds of things, right? Social worker help. And I just want to encourage everybody to check that out. Now, there was somebody who called me and said, we're struggling, and I don't know how we're going to get through the next couple of months for various and sundry reasons. And I said, okay, so let's find your 211 site and go to it. I won't be able to call for you, but click on the rent assistance, call them. And they called, and then I checked back with them the next day. I said, what did they say? Did they have any resources for you? And they said no. They said that they don't do that for the city that I live in. And I said, oh, okay, so did you ask them what the phone number is for the one? She said, oh no, I just assumed that they just don't offer that for where I live. And I said, no, I think that probably means that it's a different phone number, but ask them if they know. And here's the other trick. If they don't know, ask them to talk to the manager and ask if anybody knows where the phone number is. And if they don't know that, ask them, do you have any idea how I would find out who would have the phone number? And they were like, oh, okay, I didn't realize I had to be that explicit. And I said, in this world, in this time, that is what you need to do to get things done. You got to keep asking and refining the question. I am a crazy person about this because I'll ask a question. I do this all the time with my poor beleaguered husband. I'll ask him a question and he gives me an answer to which I say, that is wonderful, but that is not the question that I asked. The question that I asked was, like, for instance, I'll say, are we out of eggs? And he'll say, well, we ordered them last week. Thank you. That is wonderful. Thrilled for the information, but that doesn't tell me if we are now out of them. You see what I mean? And I find that I do that a lot everywhere I go. I'll ask a question and people give me an answer that they think that they've answered my question, but they really haven't. And sometimes it means you got to ask the question in a different way. Because I don't know whether it's just this generation or that we are all so Netflixed out, but like sometimes there's misunderstandings and we can't have misunderstandings when it's important. So figuring out the right question and knowing the right question to ask. One of my favorite things about Autism Live being live and that we have this interactive chat, which I'm about to get to, is that sometimes you guys will ask a question. And you're just asking the question for you and for your family and for yourself. But everybody else gets to hear that question. And we've learned really early on when we started doing Autism Live that sometimes people go, wait a second, somebody just asked about that. I didn't even know that that was a thing. I'm having that too. I didn't even know that I could ask a question about that. And now suddenly people know, oh, I can ask a question about that. That's a thing. And everybody learns. So remember that when you ask a question, you're not only helping yourself, but you're helping other people as well, which I super duper love. Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon, you live from many places around the country. You can't see it right now, but we have Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh with us. She is on the phone long distance from parts elsewhere. But we're thrilled to have her with us this morning. And she's going to be answering your questions in real time because it's Wednesday. And on Wednesday, we, whenever possible, feature Ask Dr. Doreen. Now, sometimes she's too far away and we can't have her, but we're trying really hard to have her, even though she's very far away this morning. And it's been one of those crazy mornings, and we tried very diligently to be able to get picture and sound, but we've got her in voice. So good morning, Dr. Grampy-Shea.
Good morning, Shannon, and hi, everyone. And I am so sorry that I can't be with you in person or on video, but at least I am able to use my cell phone, and I hear you perfectly, and hopefully I can answer questions.
Wonderful. So want to remind everybody that this is a perfect time. We like to say that this show, our favorite thing is interactive, because it is. And there are many different ways that you can be interacting. Right now, we're live on a bunch of different platforms, but the big four that I always like to remind you are YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope. So if you are on one of those four platforms right now, all you have to do is comment on that platform, and it aggregates right here for us. And I'm able to see your questions and relay them to Dr. Grampy-Shea. So we want to encourage you to utilize that. If there are many other places that we are live right now, it takes, like Traven is showing them to you on the screen right now, Africa, Vaughn Live, many other places. You can leave messages there. It takes a little bit longer. You're much more likely to get your question answered live if you're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Periscope. But I also want to remind you that we podcast this show to many different places. In fact, any place that you get your podcast, likely we are there. And we are a free download. And on many of them, you can choose, do you want just sound or picture and sound? For instance, on iTunes, you get to choose. So if you're watching or listening after the fact and you have a question, please feel free to write that in on our homepage, which is autism-live.com. We're saying good morning to Amanda, who's sending us her signature blue hearts this morning. Thank you for being with us, Amanda. We love it when you're here. And see, it's as easy as that, you guys. Go ahead and write in. You can get a shout out from me, and better yet, have your question answered by Dr. Doreen Grampy-Shea. I also want to remind you that all of our shows are archived on our YouTube page and on our homepage. So if you want to go back in time and see, for instance, you're like, well, I've got an issue with bedwetting. And so you could go to our homepage or go to our YouTube page and put that in the keyword search and see all the interviews that we've done over the last 10 years about that subject, or you can put in a person if you want to search. It's such a huge library that I will be honest with you and tell you that it's not perfect, although we get it better all the time and put in keywords, hopefully looking for, putting in what you guys are looking for. But there is a vast library of videos. Anything you want information about is available there. But as I said, one of our favorite segments is Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Grampy-Shea is a true expert in the field of autism. She is, I think it's spooky. I think she can see around corners but I think that part of it is she's just a really intelligent, compassionate expert who's been doing this for way longer than I think she should admit to, because no one would know. She looks like she's in her early 20s. And when she tells you that she's been doing this for 40 years, you go, that just doesn't add up. But she's a true expert in this field, and we're so lucky to have her with us this morning answering questions. And so the other thing I left out is that we do like to give the disclaimer at the start of the show that even though Dr. Grampy-Shea, I believe, is the preeminent expert in the field of autism in this time, there is no expert in this field or any field who could give individual specific advice in this format. So we just have to understand that and know that when you guys ask a question, she's going to, ask you more questions. That's why I love this live feature. And she's going to give you information that then you're going to take to your home experts who have eyes on the individual, eyes on you, and you'll get further because you'll know what questions to ask. Okay, so in fact, somebody has just written in, Dr. Grampy-Shea, and said, I'm having a hard time getting my 2-year-old evaluated. Can you give me any advice, please? This is a very hard thing in COVID, getting an evaluation. Yeah.
It really is. And I guess the answer, Shannon, is first I have to ask where you are. And what type of evaluation are you talking about? Are you seeing symptoms or things that are concerning to you and you'd really want to kind of get someone who can give you a diagnosis? Or do you already have that and you're sort of wondering what to do next? And also, where are you? Because, it's different state by state.
Yeah, and country by country. So Sam Rawit on YouTube, she says, I live in Virginia.
Oh, okay. Well, so have you, and again, if you want to get a diagnostic evaluation, I think you need to try to contact your insurance company and get with a psychologist or a developmental pediatrician, a psychiatrist, a neurologist. Those are the four main professions that can help you out. Now, I happen to have a whole ton of psychology licenses in different states, and one of the states is Virginia. So I could help you, but the only way I can help you is to do a Zoom type of meeting with you and, kind of guide you. They don't really like it if we do a full diagnosis via Zoom, but I'd be happy to get together with you on Zoom and see your child and try to figure out what we need to do for you. And also, CARD has a lot of centers in Virginia. So if the diagnosis ends up being ASD, then certainly we can help you with treatment as well.
Okay, and she wrote back in and said, two things, that there's a long waiting line in her state, but yeah. She said she would love to, she said, I would love that, please, getting together with you via Zoom. So the next step and I think you're going to now be inundated, Dr. Granpeesheh. They said, wow, a Zoom. Somebody else said, wow, a Zoom with Dr. Granpeesheh. And they said, lucky. I'm with them on that. I consider myself lucky every week that I get to be here with you. But so do they write to me to hook that up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Shannon, if you don't mind just getting their information, and then I can pass it on to Sarah and she can organize that for me.
Yes.
And, I want our viewers to know, honestly, one of my, I don't want to say favorites because it's never lots of fun to sit down and diagnose a child, but I do love having contacts with the families and with the children, and I am licensed in a lot of different states, and part of the reason that I became licensed in a lot of different states is that there are waiting lists for assessment and diagnosis, and that just disturbs me so much. That you feel, as a parent, you feel like there's something going on with my child and you can't get in to see someone to help you understand what it is and to just move forward. So, I have actually been thinking about how I can try to help more families in all of the states where I am licensed, at least just with the initial assessment portion. So I'm learning more about what we're allowed to do via telehealth. And honestly, if I am allowed to diagnose via telehealth, then I'm going to open the doors to, I think I'm licensed in 10 or 12 states. And I'm just going to start doing that because there's such a huge need out there.
There absolutely is. And I think everybody will be very grateful. Those who are watching live just saw me completely panic because while you were talking, my phone, which you're speaking through, said it wasn't charging. It did that low battery noise
oh, sure.
And I was like, what's happening? Because it had come unplugged. It was plugged in, but it had come unplugged. So I'm just letting everybody know, you saw the look of panic and me jumping out of my seat and running around like a crazy person. We are now charging. We're not going to lose Dr. Granpeesheh because that would have been horrible. So what I did was I put in my email. Traven's got it on the screen. It's s.penrod@autism-live.com. And I also put it so you should be seeing it on all of the formats, the big four that we're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Periscope. You should be able to see that right now. So just letting you guys know that. And what a great thing, Dr. Granpeesheh. I think there'd be I think people would line up, to be quite honest.
Well, And to be honest, Shannon, you know me, I love to be in contact and help families. So it would be a very positive experience for me as well.
There we go. Great. So write to me, and I will make sure that it gets forwarded to the right person. Mary wants to know, my great grand twin girls were diagnosed with autism. Now they are 6 years old, and now they are no longer on the spectrum. I always thought that once on the spectrum, you never came off. Do you want to address that?
Oh, I'd love to talk about that. So, first of all, how wonderful for you. And, you know, like anything else, these disorders like autism are based on a series of symptoms that have to be present. So, and in for autism, let's just talk about that for a minute. The symptoms are essentially in three different areas. You have to have some delays in the area of speech and language, and then you have to have some delays in social behavior, which typically, if you have a speech and language delay, you will have a social delay as well. And then the third area is this area called repetitive stereotypical behaviors. Typically with kids with autism, they develop these repetitive behaviors like lining up their toys or toe walking or turning the lights on and off, or there's a variety of them. And so if you have enough symptoms in those three areas, you receive a diagnosis, right? Now, over the course of treatment, which obviously the number one treatment that's also authorized and approved by the FDA is ABA, or Applied Behavior Analysis. And Applied Behavior Analysis, what we are doing is we're kind of replacing these symptoms with more appropriate communication and appropriate social behavior. So whatever was missing, we're basically teaching. So yes, the whole goal of ABA is to remove the symptoms so that you lose the diagnosis. And, you know, we're very fortunate in about half of our cases, we get the children young enough and we work hard enough. That means the intensity of the therapy is very high, like 40 hours a week for 2 to 3 years. And parents are involved and they get trained. And it's a very, very kind of intense effort for about 3 years. And when everything works, half of our children lose that diagnosis. So losing your diagnosis is not impossible by any means. In fact, it is our goal. And even for children who don't fully lose the diagnosis, they hopefully will learn through ABA and their symptoms will decrease, both in number and in intensity. And Shanna, you might want to talk about kind of how much of it takes a village it is for so many years.
Yeah, it's not a short sprint, and I love that for this grandma that you've got twins that are 6 years old and are now no longer qualified for that diagnosis. But I want to say something, and I want your thoughts about it, Dr. Granpeesheh. What I'm fond of saying to people, because they'll say to me, I don't understand. I think those of you who watch the show know that I have a son that was diagnosed at 2.5. We were lucky because we got him started at CARD right after his 3rd birthday. And he did 5 years of therapy. And I would tell you that like 3.5 of them were intense, where we put a whole lot of other things on hold and we worked with a team of people. And it was work. It was work for them. It was work for us. It was work for my son. CARD was amazing because they made sure, one of the basic tenets of ABA is that, there has to be reinforcers. And they made sure that he was having a good time during the work. But it was work. Let's not mince words. But, we're one of those lucky families that, I don't think anybody could at this moment in time look at my son and say that he has a disability.
That's right.
And that's amazing. And that is worth, if you have the opportunity to do this kind of intervention, I think one of the people on our team used to say to us, it's like having an Olympic athlete. You're going to go all in for a couple of years, knowing it's not forever, but you're going to go all in for a couple of years to set them up for success for the rest of their lives. You don't know if you're going to get to the Olympics. You don't know if you're going to win a gold medal, but you have to be willing to go all in. But what I say to people when they say, I don't understand, we thought that you were looking at this lifetime of having a child who was highly disabled. And what I say to people is, my son's brain still works really differently from mine. His brain is always going to work differently from mine, but we took hurdles out of his way. So now he gets to use that to his benefit.
That's right.
It's not that we changed who he was. I want to be really clear about that, because I know there's a lot of adults that are on the spectrum, self-advocates who are my friends and that I love, who will say, are you changing this person? And no, I feel like he was taught another language and that he can move very easily between all of the languages that he speaks now. And there's no disabling aspect, but his brain still works different. I will tell you, I think quite honestly, his brain works better than mine.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I honestly agree with everything you said there, Shannon.
But the thing is that before, one of the things when I explain to kids, when I do talks to kids about autism, I always give the example about computers. There's a Mac and there's a PC. And, if you expect a Mac to do what a PC is, but you don't teach it to do it, and you don't give it plugins to help it to be able to do it, it's going to be frustrated and you're going to be frustrated. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other. And what I saw is that ABA and CARD, oh my gosh, CARD, helped my son to be exactly who he is. They removed obstacles and they gave him plugins that were translators so that he knows how to do what he wants to do, but he is himself, and he's quirky and he's fun and he's hilarious and he's successful and he has friends. But he is still his own person. So
that's right. I mean, and Shannon, I love that example of the PC and Mac. But I mean, honestly, if you think about it as a parent, our children learn a lot of things, right? And at some point, as they're younger, we put them in a variety of classes. For example, swimming class, or we teach our kids how to swim. That doesn't mean from the moment we teach them how to swim, they don't walk anymore.
That's right.
They're just learning a new skill, right? Or kids who learn multiple languages. That doesn't mean they're forgetting their original language. They're just learning multiple languages. Or gym, or speech therapy, or whatever it is. And think about the number of hours. One of my friends, her child just has a really strong propensity for basketball, right? I'm telling you, or a lot of my friends, actually, their kids used to do soccer. And the amount of time we put into taking the child from one game to another and traveling cities even and doing all this sort of stuff is similar in terms of the commitment you have to make to it. It's a few years. I love your example of, you're training an Olympic type athlete. And I don't, so it takes a commitment, right, from the parents, as well as we're giving you a lot of help. There's a lot of people who are working on this with you. Now, I just don't think of autism as a disability because, truthfully, like you said, our kids, their brains work in a different way, and a lot of times in a stronger way. Visual memory, much, much stronger than ours. Ability to memorize things as a whole. I mean, unbelievable strength. Some of our kids teach themselves reading at the age of 2 or 3, you know? So genius type skills, which are incredible, and they're never lost, and they will always be a strength that the individual holds. But if you just have those, you don't necessarily have functional adaptive skills that help you survive in society and life. And what we're trying to do is just give you some of those kind of functional adaptive skills that help you live in this society, right? With
Yeah.
all the rules of society. But nevertheless, I love the fact that our kids have some amazing strengths. And I always encourage parents to build on those as well.
Yeah, and I guess the one thing I would say to the grandma with the 6-year-olds that no longer have a diagnosis, and I want to say, that's just so amazing. But somebody had written in and said it's amazing if a child is given the chance to reach their own full potential, but it's also a problem if you pull a child out prematurely. It's not a smart idea, parents, because symptoms can come back. So, and I agree that not only can some symptoms come back, but I also know that some of our kids, each time they crest another milestone in their growth, they have different challenges. So the kids at 6, the challenges that you're going to see that they're going to face other challenges when puberty hits, and just like our typical kids. And I think a lot of times that we go, oh, okay, we're totally done. But our kids, all of our kids, neurotypical or otherwise, need different things along the way. And I think that, to your point, Dr. Granpeesheh, what you were just saying about let's look at the individual and keep having them learn. And, my son, even though he finished his ABA program by the time he was 8, we continued to do other things and to build his social skills, to give him job skills. We didn't just go, okay, now we're done. We took what ABA and CARD taught us and we worked hard applying it to his everyday life. And when we saw something, we were like, okay, let's pull out our ABA toolkit and what can we do? We didn't rush him back into therapy, but we tried to say, we know what works with him to help him to learn a new skill. So how can we support that? And we're still doing that. I'm trying to get him ready to go to college. Somebody grab my head and hold on to it because it's about to pop off. But right. But I think I have friends who have neurotypical kids, and I have 2 classes of friends. I don't want to tell on anybody, but some of them are like, oh, my child is going to college in the fall, which means we're working on doing laundry right now. And they're very proactive about it. Right. And then I have other friends who, I don't know, it's like their kid turned 12 and they were like, I'm done parenting. Do you know what I mean? And then they're shocked when their kid doesn't know how to do something. And I'm like, well, did you expect them just like, if you're not teaching them, they're picking it up on the streets. And those are neurotypical kids.
Yeah.
So,
we're never done. I want to talk about that for a second, Shannon, because a lot of parents, especially when we are doing pretty well or at any point in the program, they're worried that that literally symptoms come back. And I want to kind of break that apart a little bit, because I truly don't think symptoms come back. Once a child has learned something, they've learned it. It's not like they're going to, in the vast majority of cases, when it is learned and maintained, so mastered in the generalized environment, it's not like you lose skills. What does come back is frustration because there are new demands in your life and you haven't mastered those. So you gave a great example of that, which is, when you're 6 years old, you don't, a skill of doing laundry is not something that you're expected to do. But maybe when you're 15, it is expected. So it's a new skill, right? Just like a 2-year-old is not going to be tying their own shoes, but maybe a 5 or 6-year-old is, or biking, or whatever it is. So there will be different skills. And if you don't know those, you might express frustration over them again. But I want everyone to remember that the challenging behaviors that we see in our kids are not part of the diagnosis, right? They're not symptoms of autism. They're simply symptoms of frustration. So obviously, as the child ages, there are new skills that we need to teach, because it is likely that the child will hit other walls or obstacles or experiences in there, just like we all do,
Yeah.
just like we all do,
Yeah.
where we get frustrated over and over until we learn. But symptoms in terms of like you teach a child a certain language skill or a certain social skill, they're not going to lose those skills that they mastered. That's kind of an important thing, because I know a lot of parents worry, especially those of recovered children. They often ask me if they're worried about discontinuing services because they're worried that things will fall apart again. And I'm like, no, they're not going to fall apart. We're always here to help guide you, but it's not like your child is going to lose what they learn. Now, you might remove all the rules and then the child might be kind of acting out again. But those are not symptoms of autism.
It's interesting you should say that, because I think, more and more of us have kiddos that, because as you talk about it here all the time, kids present in different ways and have different types of autism. But a lot of us have kids who regressed into autism, that they had some level of skill, they were talking, and then that went away. And I know for me, man, I spent at least 4 of the 5 years doing ABA being panicked, so afraid, because my child had been talking in full sentences. And it wasn't like he stopped doing it overnight. He stopped doing it very slowly. And so anytime, let's say that a skill was mastered, but it hadn't quite generalized yet, and then we didn't do it as much, and then we would come back to it and his skill level had slipped, I would panic. I still, to this day, and my son is doing so wonderfully, I mean, like off the chart wonderful. And I still, to this day, am terrified that like we could lose it, because of how it was like watching a car accident in slow motion as I watched my child slip away. So I love hearing from you, that it's not going to go away.
No, absolutely. And I thank you for that explanation, because it makes sense to me, if I saw my child lose skills, which many parents have sort of regressive autism, so many parents have experienced that, it would be a very frightening thing. But it truly is not necessarily, it's kind of like you talked about learning how to bike, for example. If you just go out and the very first time, you're biking on your own without training wheels, and then you come back and you're like, hey, I mastered the skill of biking. That isn't quite true, right? And a week goes by and you might need to gain balancing all over again because you haven't really mastered it. But once you master a skill, which means, you're biking for 2 weeks and you're running around and you're completely comfortable, you're not going to lose that skill no matter what. And that holds true for our kids 100%. So I always want to reassure parents that, yes, our children will have different obstacles at different ages. And yes, they will react to those with frustration, anxiety, etc., just like we would. They're not going to lose the skills they've mastered.
Well, that's a great gift today. I really appreciate hearing that. We've got so many questions. I want to pop into some of these here for a second. Okay, so I need guidance as to where to go now that we have a diagnosis for my 7-year-old son. We do have school, OT, speech therapy, and social skills, but I feel like I don't even know what resources I should be seeking. We've started to look into CARD, but with recent events, we haven't scheduled a consultation yet. And they say that they are in San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah. So you 100% need ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis. And it is different from speech and OT. ABA is based on, it's just a very simple thing. It's so complicated when people are told you need ABA and they're like, well, what is that? So I want to try to simplify it as much as I can. So the concept of ABA is just like tutoring. Just think of it as intensive tutoring, but it's based on operant conditioning, which is kind of a very, very simple part of psychology. And what it says is basically I want to increase a skill, I'm going to reward it. That's it. I'm going to provoke that skill by prompting, modeling, helping the child. And when they do the skill, I'm going to reward it. And that skill will therefore increase. Okay? That is the basis of ABA. And if I don't want a behavior, like screaming or whatever, what do? I remove reinforcers. I make sure nothing is rewarding that behavior. That's all ABA is. Let's reward the behaviors we want to increase. Let's not reward the behaviors we don't want to increase. We want to decrease. So then the question becomes, what behaviors, right? And that's where it becomes a very, very individualized type of program. You really have to establish for each child exactly what skills you want to teach and exactly what challenging behaviors you want to eliminate. This is a 7-year-old child we're talking about here. You would do an assessment, which we've developed one online, and Shannon can speak more to that. And essentially, we're just trying to identify every possible skill that this 7-year-old should be doing at a typical mental age of 7, but is not doing. Now, they could be anything. It could be, adaptive skills like grooming. It could be language skills like joining a group of friends and communicating with them, taking turns. It could be a social skill like knowing how to talk to an adult as opposed to a child. It could be a cognitive skill like how do I plan to do my homework in the future? Whatever it is, across all domains, we list all those skills and we go about teaching them. That's it. And so if the more hours, we're going to teach more. And we get to a point where, I'm assuming when a child is only just diagnosed at age 7, that they're relatively high functioning. And all that means is that there are fewer things we need to teach them to get them up to age level. And that's the whole premise, is how much can we teach this child given the amount of time we have?
Yeah. It's like we have a Vulcan mind meld with you today, because I just want everybody to know Dr. Granpeesheh isn't able to see the questions today because she's on the phone. But but you already hit on 2 things that people wanted to know about. Somebody wrote in and said, my son, 10 years old, he doesn't differentiate adult from child the way he talks. So he tells me to shut up and tells his dad. Also a lot of NES, and they want to know, is there a program for that? And you just mentioned that there is a program for that. And then if you want to talk briefly about that, and then I will tell everybody what the free things, because we have somebody else writing in saying, can you talk about the free IBT training this week and about skills? What's free this week?
Yes. So the program, I believe, is called Levels of Friendship. If you go in, Shannon will in a moment give you a phone number and a URL where you can go in and look at Skills. Skills was a technology that we built almost 20 years ago now. And essentially it's a curriculum, but it really depends very heavily on an assessment. So you initially go in and you answer questions about what your child can and cannot do. And then it establishes a whole series of things to teach. If I believe Levels of Friendship would be in the social curriculum. There's 8 curriculum areas, everything from play to cognitive, executive functioning, motor, adaptive, academic, and social, of course, and language, of course. But when you go in the social curriculum, there is a lesson that is specifically intended to teach this particular concept, which is, you might use familiar language with someone who's a friend or the same age, but you're going to use kind of much more formal language with someone who's either an acquaintance or older or a friend of a parent. And we go by levels. And like there's even a difference between your best friend and the next level, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do right now is take a second and tell you guys what the free things that are available on Skills and IBT. But I also want everybody to know that on tomorrow's show, our very special guest on the show, we have a representative from Skills and a representative from IBT. We're really going to be breaking it down tomorrow, and they're going to give you a lot of good information. But because you're asking today, and because we usually talk about this on Ask Dr. Doreen, so there's Skills and there's IBT, and excuse me, every week they offer, in COVID, they offer something that's free of no charge to you because they want to make sure that you're getting good information while you're doing COVID. So this week for ABA parents and guardians, they're offering the free IBT parent e-learning course, Parent School Readiness Skills. I really love this because a lot of you or your children are going back into the actual classroom, and you need to be getting them prepped and ready for that because they've been home for a year in a lot of cases. They also offer something for the educator community. This week, they're offering Educator Impact on the Classroom. That's available to teachers, free, no charge. If you're a parent and want to get that for your child's teacher, you can do that. I'm going to give you a phone number for all of these things in just a second. They're also continuing to offer the RBT 2.0 course on a parent by parent basis. You have to be really motivated to do it, but if you will contact them directly with this phone number that I'm going to give you and let them know that it's a 40-hour class, but it's amazing, that will help you to understand what your therapists are doing. It's the first step that someone takes to be certified to be a registered behavior technician. So really encourage parents to do that. They're also offering a 10% discount on all Skills products, which Dr. Grant Piché was just talking about, that assessment. But there's also a behavior intervention plan builder and that entire curriculum. So you can get 10% off. All you need to do is call this number that I'm going to give you, get your pencils ready, and you're going to say you saw it on Autism Live. You can say, I'm friends with Shannon. I want the friends and family discount. Excuse me. So the phone number is 877-975-4559. So again, that's 877-975-4559. But they are going to be on the show tomorrow talking about Skills and IBT. So if you guys have specific questions, let me also say too that many of you are writing in, a lot of you are watching us from places outside of the United States. And so the toll-free number is not really something that you can do. Don't worry about that. You can email me. And what I've been doing is forwarding over your requests to them and connecting them to your email. So only for people who are, excuse me, outside the US. Otherwise, just call the 800 number. It's faster for you if you call the 800 number, but we don't want people who are living in other places around the world to miss out on this. You can email me s.penrod@autism-live.com. I had put it in the chat earlier. Also want to say to that mom with a 7-year-old that's in San Antonio, Texas, we have amazing people in CARD in Texas. And so if you need any help figuring out how you get started, also email me and I'll be happy to point you in the right direction because I know we have really good resources there. Okay. I'm sending some love to our, we've got a parent that I know and love, and I think you know and love her as well, Dr. Grant Piché. And she says, I'm trying to be like Shannon, but I feel like no one is on board from school to ABA. I had hope from you and Dr. Doreen that he could recover, but now we are playing catch up and I am so sad. And I just want to send her a hug. I know, Dr. Graham, I've started to notice how hard it is for people that I call that are in the in-between phase. These are people whose kiddos are between the ages of 8 and 14. And I hear from a lot of people that, first of all, at that point, you've got caregiver fatigue that sets in, which is, would happen to anybody, where it's like you're so tired, but also that things start to shift, that you see people starting to say that, instead of doing a comprehensive program, now we're going to do a focus program. I'm hearing from parents, it feels like everybody's giving up on this idea of the promised land. What do you say to a parent who's feeling sad and feels like people aren't on board? Because I assure this parent that I'm there with you. I'm sending you a hug.
Yeah.
But what do you say to them, Dr. Gibson?
Because I can't see the names, or I have no access to the internet right now. I'm wondering if this is the parent who recently shared with me a series of assessments for her child, and this parent wanted me to look at all of these assessments and give some guidance. Maybe the parent can write in and let us know.
Okay.
What I say is this, Shannon. It's extremely difficult. I understand, because first of all,
she says yes. That's her. That is her.
Yeah. So I know who this is. So here's what I want to say. One thing is that I completely understand. This is a lovely parent, by the way. We all love you. Let me just tell you, when I say we, it means everyone at CARD who knows you, because you have been such a dedicated, hardworking, committed mother for so many years. And we love to see that, and we admire that. And I think that, stepping away from the detail, I want you to know that your child is doing extremely well. So that in itself is a major accomplishment. Now, I know that when you're in the kind of nitty gritty and looking at all the detail, there's a lot still left to do. But here's a couple of different things. First of all, Shannon, as most of our viewers will know, unfortunately, at a certain age, we have to discontinue doing these intensive programs just because the payers won't allow it, right? The payers are cutting off earlier and earlier, unfortunately, these days. And I know this parent in particular actually lost funding, and I believe went back and got some funding back, which is wonderful. But what happens is we are limited in time, not only because of the payers, but also because our children are in school now, and we have to add all of the academic burden to their program as well, and it's just too much, right? What happens is it just takes a little bit longer. Don't panic, don't worry. The fact that he's not done at this point doesn't mean that he won't be done. It doesn't mean that he won't get to a point where his life is independent and that he's happy and that he's doing all the things that you wished for him. It's just going to be a little bit longer. And let me tell you, in general, when our kids become teens, they learn in different ways. It's not like, when you're a child and when you're getting 40 hours of ABA, the acquisition rate, what you're learning, the cycle is so fast, right? It's almost like every day you're learning something new. But when you're a little bit older, those things need they're more advanced things, first of all. They're more abstract concepts. And they need more time to kind of materialize and stay in your brain and merge with everything else that you've learned so far. It's just a slower process. It's not as fast. It's kind of like, you can memorize the ABCs in a day, but you can't put sentence structure together in a day, right? The more advanced the material, the longer it takes. And that's where he is. And your child has very significant strengths as well. Let's not forget those things, which will help him, and they will come into play when he is older, and they will pull it all together for him. And the other thing, Shannon, that I want to say is this. As parents of even typically developing kids, we start with a vision. And we're like, I want all of my kids to fit into this vision. And let me tell you, I had a lot of visions for my kids too. But, I speak 4 languages. So I wanted my kids to learn at least 3 or 4 languages. Mm-hmm. Do they? No, they don't. My son only speaks English. I wanted my kids all to have some athletic ability and so on. Do they? Not really. So we produce these boxes that we want our kids to fit into, but the truth is, the box can have a different shape. It doesn't have to be the shape that you envisioned, but yet the more important things can still come about. And for this parent in particular, this is a very, very intelligent child. He's going to go on and do great things. Whether or not his social behavior is perfect is going to become less of an important factor. And that's just something, that's reality. But what you should fall back on is that you've done a significant, incredible job. And there's nothing that you could have done that you didn't do. You've done an amazing job, and he's going to be great. He's going to have a wonderful life. It's just not going to be exactly the way you envisioned.
It might be better.
It might be better in a lot of ways. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I just want you to know that we're sending love to this mom. She says she's literally about to go into surgery, but she's listening to you and crying. So we're sending her love, hoping for good surgery and renewed feeling of being in people's arms, because that's where you are. We're sending you love. Hey, I love this next question. We have a young adult on the spectrum who says, hey, Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, quick question. How can you, as a person on the spectrum, handle change? Change makes me anger easily. The breakup of Daft Punk almost made me go into a complete meltdown. What should I do? I so appreciate you sharing that with us and asking that question. Thank you so much. Dr. Granpeesheh?
I love that. And can I just, Shannon, I couldn't hear you. The breakup of what?
Daft Punk. The group Daft Punk announced this week that they're breaking up. Yeah.
So, and I love more than anything when we have individuals on the spectrum calling in and writing in, because this is wonderful. And we learn from you just as, we help you figure things out, but we're also learning from you. So let me just talk about change for a little bit. And this is not just for you, it's for everyone, right? Not just individuals on the spectrum. In general, change produces anxiety. That is the very first thing about change. It doesn't matter what kind of change it is, it produces anxiety. Why? The reason it produces anxiety is that it is unfamiliar, right? So we no longer, when something changes, we no longer know where things are going. It causes us to feel uncertain about things. It makes us feel shaky because everything seems unfamiliar from that point forward. Now, if you understand that, and if you start to try to do a number of different things, which is, deal with the anxiety, and don't worry about the change. The reason you're angry is because there's a certain amount of anxiety there about this particular thing changing. Maybe it was a very calming thing for you. Maybe it was something that made you feel comfortable, familiar, safe, happy. And now you're worried, you're anxious that you will no longer have those feelings or have the ability to feel good. So you got to deal with the core root of the anxiety, not the change, because if there's one thing in life that's certain, Shannon, it is change is going to happen.
That's right.
So we have to get to the point where we realize that every time something changes, it causes anxiety. What is really causing my anxiety? And can I deal with the anxiety itself? So, for example, in this particular case, maybe the individual feels like, oh, I'm never going to have that level of, happiness or comfort that I used to have when I was listening to this group, right? So what happens now is you have to think of different ways to reduce the anxiety. The change is just there. You have to think of ways you can calm yourself with the anxiety. Does that make sense, Shannon?
It makes total sense. And I'm sending this person a hug because I think that a lot of people have these feelings about different things. And I remember being a young person and being turned on to Simon and Garfunkel. And they had already broken up by the time I listened to their first album, but I just loved Simon and Garfunkel. And I thought, this is the most amazing thing. And I can't wait to hear more from Simon and Garfunkel. And I'm going to go to their concerts. And then somebody said, they've already broken up. And for 3 days, I was in mourning over it. I was 17 years old and I was crying. I was like, well, how can there be no more of this? And yet I'm here to tell you, I'm 58 years old. I've been to see Simon and Garfunkel twice in concert, even though they were never, ever, ever going to get back together. They have shortly, right after I was crying about it, they cut a record with my other favorite, James Taylor. Like you will see that, sometimes things that are supposedly black and white definitive we're breaking up aren't necessarily, wait 10 years, there might be more Daft Punk. I know that doesn't help you now, but I look back on that and I go, with age, I have gotten to see that, part of change is that things can change in a good way too. And that things that you lose can come back in lots of different ways. I love a friend of mine said, the whole thing of nature is that nothing is ever in stasis. Everything is constantly changing. Like even a flower, it's a seed and then it's a flower and then the flower dies. Everything is always changing. And she said, the thing is that human beings are the only part of nature that are constantly upset about it and striving for stasis. That we constantly want to keep things the same, and they won't ever be the same. It's hard.
That's right. And I will say, I'll share some stuff with the viewers. So I used to be a complete, massive, one of the biggest fans of Genesis, right? And when I was in my first year at university, I went everywhere I could, and I saw probably, 20 different Genesis concerts back to back in 1 year, right? And of course, that went on. I went to every single concert every year. I did that for a long, long, long time until sometime in the 90s, if I remember, or maybe it was in the 2000s. I would travel to Europe, Shannon, to see their concerts, right? Mm-hmm. And so finally it became their last year and they stopped. And I was anxious. I was depressed. I was angry. I couldn't believe that this incredible band that I loved for so many years, that their music brought me so much joy, was no longer going to happen, right? So what did I do? I went and I bought like 5 CD sets and DVD sets, and I kept them with me. And I was like, I'm always going to listen to this music and so on. And I was still angry, just like this viewer is. Then I suddenly got introduced through my husband to another band, because now I kind of didn't have the ability to just listen to new songs by Genesis. I had the old songs, which were incredible, and I always enjoyed them. But now I also had this new band, which was slightly different, but in so many ways also fantastic. And of course, now I'm fortunate that I can also travel with him and occasionally see that band. So change has its downside, but as Shannon said, it always, sometimes it's through, if you resisted all change, you would never experience something better. So sometimes what you're going to experience in change is even something that you like more. So allow the universe, allow the world to bring you these new things, because you will enjoy them as well.
Absolutely. I gotta admit, I am loving this next question. Although I'm feeling the stress that it's causing the mom, but this is amazing. My son has taught himself Mandarin Chinese, and I have to say it is hindering his skill acquisition. I feel like he speaks it better than English sometimes. So I hear the anxiety that it's causing this mom, but I'm also hearing how amazing this is, Dr. Granpeesheh. What do you want to say to this mom?
I just love that. These are the amazing things that bring me so much joy in this puzzle that we call autism, And Shannon, as you know, one of our very dear recovered children also did this, right? The one who's getting or just received his doctorate in robotics. He also taught himself Mandarin Chinese. I think it's brilliant. It's so incredible, and I don't think you should be worried. If you are, just get a speech and language evaluation and make sure that he's not giving up his English. I can guarantee you that he won't. English is a way less complicated language than Mandarin Chinese. So I think that your child is just, this is kind of like Mozart, and these incredibly special brains of our children, where, yes, it might be that social language isn't up to par, but there are other aspects of his brain that are working in such a superior fashion that he's able to teach himself a whole nother language, and a very complicated one at that. So I think you let it be for a while. If you're really worried, maybe get an evaluation and go from there.
Okay. And then our last question, because we got to go, but somebody said, can I view this as a recording later? Yes. This will be available on all of the sites that we just were live on: YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, and Facebook Live. But then the best place to find it after today is on our YouTube channel or on our homepage, which is autism-live.com. You will be able to find it. It is available there and will be there in perpetuity, I would say. So I do want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Granpeesheh, who worked so hard to be here with you guys this morning. She, we're talking heavy lifting so that she could be here with you guys this morning. And thank you to your husband as well for helping to make that a possibility.
Helping me calm down and not panic because I couldn't get on the internet. But it was a pleasure, Shannon, and thank you for making it happen. Thank you to our producer, Traven. I'm always happy to do this, and I'm just so happy we could help some families today.
Absolutely. Such a privilege. And I want to remind everybody that tomorrow on the show, for the first time in a long time, we've got a representative from Skills and a representative from IBT. We're really going to be breaking it down, what they are, because you guys ask a lot of questions about them, and they're going to be telling you more about what's coming from Skills and IBT. And we're really looking forward to that. And then on Friday, we're going to win it for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We have a research update with the folks from our research team who are going to be breaking down some research for us, and of course in the news. So all of that is still coming up this week. We're out of time. Thank you, Dr. Granpeesheh. Thank you, Traven, and thank you to all of you. It's such a privilege to be here. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Don't go away because we have a special message for you here at the end of the show. But bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we are coming to you from many different places this morning live. Today is February 25th. I always have to check the date to make sure. It's February 25th, 2021. We're so excited that you're here with us. We're going to be live for the next hour talking about autism, talking about it from a 360-degree perspective. And I'm really excited because we've got some amazing guests that are going to be joining us a little bit later on. So welcome. I want to remind you that this entire show is meant to be interactive. We want to hear from you. I especially love hearing your thoughts, your feelings, your questions, your concerns. And there are many different ways to participate for you right now in the live show, or even if you're watching this later on. So first of all, let's talk about how you watch the show. We've given you lots of different choices, not to overwhelm you, but because we know you like it how you like it, right? So you can be watching us live right now on the Big Four. The Big Four are Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook. If you're watching on any of those platforms, all you have to do is write your comments in on those sites, and they show up here on my screen in relatively real time. Go ahead, try it, and then I'll tell you the minute I see it. So somebody write in and say hello, and I'll say, oh, I see it right now, so that you'll know a little bit what the time delay is. But because we love it when you guys participate. But also, when the show is over, when the live show is over, we've recorded it and we podcast it. It's still available as a recording on those Big Four that we talked about, plus a whole bunch of other sites that we're now live on, that you can also be writing in on those platforms, but it takes infinitely longer. And if we get lots of comments on the other four, unfortunately, we can't get to everything. That is just the reality of our circumstances. But we do appreciate when you're watching us on all of those platforms. But when we're recorded, it's a podcast and it's available pretty much any place. Hey, Amira, Hello. That's how long it took. So however long you did it, that's how long it took for that to show up. Amira watching us on YouTube. Love that. So we love it when you participate. And you can be watching us any place that you get your podcasts. And if you go to the place where you get your podcasts and you don't see us, could you please do us a favor and let us know, because we want to be there for you. And our fabulous producer, Traven, will work very hard to have us be in that place where you like to get your podcasts. Deal? And you can still comment even if you're watching us in podcasts. It could be 10 years from now and you could be watching this video, and we have a website, autism-live.com. And there is a chat at the bottom and you can put your comments in the chat. A lot of times when we're having guests on, like Temple Grandin or Dr. Grant Pichet, we take our questions, our starter questions from there. So feel free to write us there as well. And of course, you can always email me directly. My email is s.penrod@autism-live.com. So that's S as in Sam, Penrod, which is P as in Peter, E as in egg, N as in Nancy, R as in robot, O as in Oscar, D as in dog, at autism. That's the one word I know you know how to spell. Hyphen, that's the dash in the middle, right? Live, L-I-V as in Victor, E.com. Okay, so we got that out of the way. I also like to remind you at the start of the show, whenever I have an opportunity to, that we have lots of experts that are here on the show. I've got some great experts for you today about one of my favorite subjects. But I just want to remind you that I'm not one of the experts. My credentials to be sitting here are, the lesser credential, as I understand it at this point in my life, is that I am the mother of a fabulous young man who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. And so that's what got me here. But the main reason why I'm here now is that I need to pay forward to all of you and help you on your journey, which is different from my journey. I want to help you to get to the things that you want to get to. I also like to remind you that the mission of this show, our mission statement, is to provide information and inspiration to that larger autism community. Now, that starts absolutely, of course, with individuals who are on the autism spectrum. I always say they're the beating heart of our community. But I also, in the conversation, include everyone who loves those individuals. I'm one of those people. And we want to be here to support and to help be a larger voice for those people to get to the things that they want. It's very hard, because as a parent, there are things I loved. If you didn't watch yesterday's show with Dr. Grant Pichet, I think it was really I thought a lovely show. I loved so many of the things that she said. And one of the things that she was saying yesterday is, what, as a parent, doesn't matter, who your child is or what diagnosis, all parents, we have this idea of who our child is going to be, and it is never who we think. And part of the journey of a parent is allowing your child to be who they are, loving them for who they are, helping them to be able to do the things that are meaningful to them. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who are probably in their teens or their 20s who this will sound weird, but those of you who are in your 30s and older or have had children will relate to this. It's like, your child turns 16 and you don't stop being a parent. I have to say to my son on a regular basis, please forgive me. I've never had a teenage son before. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how best to support you, which means that sometimes I'm not going to be the person that has all the answers, and I'm going to make mistakes, right? But I think that if we as a community are willing to accept that we don't know everything and communicate with each other, and if our intention is to provide the resources and the support and the love and the respect to individuals on the autism spectrum, I believe that we will get further. But we got to open our ears and listen. This is very hard for me. I can talk you under the table. I'm working as a person on this planet at being the person who listens. Not there, work in progress, right? But I'm working on it. So anyway, we welcome that entire community, of course, the individuals on the spectrum, but also everyone who loves them. That's what this show is for and about. Okay. Having said all of that, we again want your questions, concerns, thoughts, whatever you got going on, send it on over. And we love hearing from you. But it is time, my friends, for something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out what in the hey nani nani are these experts talking about. Why should we know this? Why do we have to bother? Why do we need this headache? Because we don't have enough to do, right? But I know that I found over the years that if you understand, jargon is there to make things faster and more effective. I understood that first as a waitress because there's so much waitress jargon, you know? And at first I was like, why is this another language being a waitress? I was 16 years old the first time I had a waitress job. And I was like, what are they saying? What does this have to do with anything? But I found that it helped things when I understood it, it made things quicker. If you don't understand it, it slows the whole thing down. So there is so much jargon in the world of autism. Some of it is psychology jargon, some of it is insurance jargon, some of it is ABA jargon. I mean, you know, come on, it's craziness. So what we do here is we take it just one bite at a time. We give you one word, one phrase, one acronym. First, we give you the actual definition, then we make fun of the actual definition, then we give you a working definition, put it into some sort of context. Be gentle with yourself. If you don't get it the first time, that's okay. We do these, cycle them over time. And the more, sometimes it's like, in order to understand one jargon term, you got to get a general understanding of a bunch of jargon terms. And then all of a sudden it starts to click. And then you save yourself the time, the money, the energy, and you get more progress. And really, that's what it's all about. So let's take a look at what our jargon term is today. Let's see how much fun we can make of it. I think I know what it is, but because we've been very slowly walking you through. Yes, it's one of the hard ones. The verbal operants. Now I got to be honest. This is one that we didn't cover for years because it's not really in the mainstream. This isn't one of those ones that you're going to hear people like when we covered manned a couple of like a week and a half ago. That's when you're going to hear constantly. Right? That, you know, ABA professionals will be talking to you about manding, speech and language pathologists will talk about manding, but we don't hear a lot about autoclitics, and we can talk about why that might be. But I gotta say, it's one that I'm still adding to my repertoire of things that I completely understand. So forgive me, let's do the best that we can. All right, so let's take a look at our actual definition, and then we can go pound our head against a wall because I have a feeling it's going to be that useless to us. Autoclitics, verbal responses that modify the effect on the listener of the primary operants that comprise B.F. Skinner's classification of verbal behavior. I'm sorry, what? An autoclitic is a verbal behavior that modifies the function of other verbal behaviors. And now find something to hit your head against, because what, where, when, how, not sure I know. Hey, Amanda, love to see your blue hearts. Okay, let's help ourselves. You know, I love Ileana Vincent. Let's help ourselves and let's move on to our working definition and see if we can't get closer to this. Again, this is one that I'm still getting my arms wrapped around. So if we go to our working definition, it's things you add to verbal communication that change how the listener interprets what is said. So if we talk about perspective taking and that you have a whole life going on in your head, some of which you share with other people, some of which you don't. And if we talk about verbal behavior and all of the ways that you and I communicate information to each other, and the way we receive that communication, right? So we've talked about how some people, you know, they have a flat affect, their face is blank, and they talk all on a monotone, and it's hard sometimes to pick up their meaning. So autoclitics are little things that you're thinking that color the way that you are speaking to other people that could change the way they receive the information. So it's little clues. This is like the finesse stuff that's advanced. that people do on a regular basis. You know how there are some people in your life that you go, wow, they're just so intuitive. And they, like maybe everybody goes out to dinner. Remember when we used to do that before we were in the Great Isolation? But you all go out to dinner, and there's a couple sitting across the table from where you're sitting, and then afterwards, on the ride home, somebody says, "Oh, I don't think that Bill and Patty were really getting along. I don't know what's going on there." And another person goes, "What are you talking about? They seem really happy. They were laughing and whatever." And somebody goes, "No, because when it was time, when they were saying about how they're going on vacation, did you notice how Patty, she was like, 'Yeah, we're going on vacation,' right?" Right? And the other person goes, "I didn't pick up on that at all," right? But if the person was paying attention and they were noticing Patty's tone and the way, her eyebrow went up, "Yeah, we're going on vacation," right? The way she inflected, that changed the way the person received the information. It isn't like, it would be easy to say it's about sarcasm. It isn't. It's about coloring the language with the thoughts that are going on to convey something. And it's the kind of stuff that's easy to miss. But once somebody knows and understands these things, if they're dialed into it, if they're tuned into it, they get more information. Now, there are ABA experts all over the place, breaking out into hives at this explanation. And Kirsten wants to know, does it mean changing pitch or using your hands? It could be all kinds of things. If you think about it, if we really want to dive into how do we, Skinner said that verbal behavior was everything that you do to convey communication in any kind of a, conversational setting, which means that it's one person and another person or a bunch of people, right? If we're sitting in a restaurant and I could be across the restaurant from you, and I can just point to something, but I'm trying to talk to you, that's verbal behavior. It isn't all vocal. In fact, Skinner said that most of it, the vast majority of communication that we have, is not vocal. And then even within vocal communication, there are all kinds of things that we do. We vary the way that we talk. We vary the language that we vary our pitch. Sometimes we're trying to communicate something, and so we will pick words that are, my mother always used to call $5 words. So we're trying to convey a certain thing, like this is more formal, or we're trying to convey that we're smart, or, there's all this information that's going backwards and forwards. So if we really dial in on all of it, autoclitics are those things that they're really hard to put a finger on, because it's a whole world of, I'm using my hands right now. I'm using the speed of which I say something. I'm pitching my voice in a certain way. I'm using my eyebrows in a certain way, right? And all of that can color what I'm communicating to you, so that you have more of an idea of, I'm saying something, but you have a better understanding of it and what my perspective is. Does that make sense? This is my baby understanding of it. So it could be sarcasm. It could be a lot of things. So I appreciate you guys all being here. I'm saying hello to Valerie. Thank you for being here. And Kirsten, I didn't say hello to you, so I'm saying hello to you. Okay, so it's one of those, like I said, I'm still getting my baby head around it, but autoclitics, it's kind of a fun thing. Very advanced, not the kind of thing we're going to hear on a regular basis, but it's another rabbit hole to go down for verbal behavior. Okay, moving on. We always have a question of the day for you. And our question today is, what positive self-statements do you use? We talk a lot on this program about what is going on in our heads, and how our perception of the world is based on what is going on in your own head. And we talk a lot about helping individuals who are on the autism spectrum to understand that what is going on in their head is not what's going on in somebody else's head. But I think this is powerful stuff, because there's a whole school of people who will say, you want to change your life, change your mind. because we all have those tapes that run in our heads of things that we say to ourselves. And we can change that, and we can help the people that we love on the autism spectrum to understand that this is a tool that they can use too. You know, I don't believe in just doing positive affirmations to just do the affirmations. But I do think that they can be really useful, especially if you're somebody who's used to talking to yourself in a negative way, to change the dialogue in your head. So I believe, and there are many people who teach that your head is a supercomputer that will always say yes. So if you're saying to yourself, oh, I'm so lazy, then your supercomputer brain will go, yes, yes, you are. And it will point to all of the examples in your day, in your life, when you were lazy. And I certainly hope that every single one of you gets at least 3 seconds in your life to be lazy, because we all need time to just be. We're not human doings, we're human beings, right? So we could all say, oh, I'm so lazy. And our brains would say yes. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. You need time to be lazy. So could it also be true that if you said to yourself, I got a lot done today, would that also be a yes? And I think that most of the time you'll find that we could say one thing and it would be true, but we could say the complete opposite and it would also be true. So this is why I like positive self-statements, because I believe that they are as equally true as the negative things that we could dredge up. And if we have a choice, you know, the negative stuff is always available, but if we have a choice to color our experience in a way that makes us happier, why not? And it's not like something that we have to have money in the bank account to do. We can just change the statements for ourselves. So what positive self-statements do you use? When you are talking to yourself, do you say things that are positive, or do you say things that are motivating? It's funny, I must be in a waitress head this morning, but I remember years ago waitressing with this wonderful, wonderful man whose name was Robbie. And he had a very, I don't know whether he was Cuban, but he had this very thick accent that was fabulous. And he trilled his R's. And whenever it would get busy in the restaurant, I think I've told this story before on the air, he would talk to himself, but he would forget that he was saying it out loud. But I loved to hear how he talked to himself, because he would be, you know, setting up a tray to take it to a table, and he would say, "Go, Robbie, go." And I still to this day use that when I'm in something where I have to get it together, and I've got to get something done, and I've got to get it done in a short period of time. I will say to myself, "Go, Robbie, go," you know, jazz myself up. And I say Robbie. I don't say go, Shannon, go. I say go, Robbie, go. Because it's just a wonderful memory for me, and it makes me happy, and it takes some of the stress away. And that's a positive statement for me. Go, Robbie, go. So what do you say? And I say lots of different things to myself, positive self-statements. Listen, I still say the negative ones too, but I'm working on it, right? Work in progress. But what are some positive self-statements that you use? And are you modeling that behavior for the people that you love in your life that are on the spectrum? Are you helping them to see that they can say positive self-statements to themselves? Are you helping them that when you hear them say something negative, are you helping them to see the flip of it? Because that's something that we can do, but it all starts with modeling the behavior. We know that individuals who are on the autism spectrum learn from their environment. We know that they learn from the people around them and how they treat themselves, that's one way in which we can be teaching them. So write in and tell us. I don't, my computer's being very weird. Inner dialogue is work in progress over here. It is for everybody. Let's all hug ourselves and admit that, you know, nobody gets this perfect, but it's like a tool that we can have. Johanna, you liked the jargon? Okay, well, I love that. It's not perfect, but it's a good thing. Okay, somebody says, I have something hanging in my dining room that says, every day may not be good, but there is something good in every day. When I get frustrated and everything is going bad in my day, I try and remember that one good thing that has happened. Okay. Traven is reminding me that I'm late for my guests. Thank you, Traven. Okay, let's move on to our topic this week and see what we've got there. But keep writing in, you guys, about your positive self statements, because our jargon today is asking the right question. Sometimes, when we're faced with a dilemma, it really comes down to what are the questions that we're asking of ourselves and what are the questions that we're asking of other people. And that when we ask the right question, sometimes it is the game changer. And this goes really perfectly with our guests today, because you guys know, if you watch this show, I am the biggest fan of the company that our guests work for. We never say the full name. We never say Skills Global. I don't know why, but Skills Global encompasses both skills and IBT, and I am their biggest fan for so many reasons. But I know that a bunch of you are fans as well. But I just want to tell you that there was a time in my life when I was out of hope, desperate, and was like, I don't know what to do to help my child. And I've shared before that I was on the floor of my bedroom in the middle of the night praying and saying, please help me to help my child. Please help me to help my child. Please, I don't know what to do and I don't want to let him down. Please don't let that be my story as a parent. I don't want to be the mom who doesn't know what to do for her kid and I don't know where else to go. Please help me. And, I was incredibly lucky that the very next day, my work sent me to a home of a family that their child had autism and their child was being treated at CARD. Changed my life. And I started on a path where there were people who could help me to know what to do to help my child. And those of you who are watching and who have been on the floor and been like, I don't know what to do to help my child or to help my grandchild or to help myself, you know how big of a deal it is when you find help, right? And by the way, when I was on the floor praying, I said, please show me what to do. And if you show me what to do, I will, once you help me to help my child, I will turn around and help whoever I can. That was the deal that I made on my bedroom floor. So the very next day I get sent to the house and I meet people who tell me about CARD. Life-changing, right? And then we started therapy and it was hard, but I saw my child improving. It was still hard because we had a long way to go, but my child was improving. And you know what a gift it is when you're with people who know how to help you to help your child. It's everything, right? So then my prayer every night switched to, how can I help other people to be able to do this? Because it can't just be that I'm lucky because I live in a place where they have this service. I can't just take this and know that there are moms in Zimbabwe and there are moms in Kansas and there's a mom in Dubai who's on the floor praying the same thing, but she doesn't have what I have. I just couldn't, that just didn't seem fair and that didn't seem right. And then one day, Dr. Grampy Shea invited me to come to see a thing, and she unveiled skills to the group of people in this room. And I don't know how I got to be lucky enough to be in the room. I'd never met her before, but I know I shook. I shook because I knew it was the thing I had prayed for. When I saw skills unveiled and I was like, this is going to help that mom in Dubai. This is going to help that mom in Kansas, but it's so much bigger than that. It's so much bigger than that, who it can help and why it can help, that, to me, it is still mind blowing. And can I just say this, and we're going to talk about this and I'm going to bring the guests in and not, cry anymore on this, but I've always loved skills and I've always loved IBT. I just think they're the greatest things since sliced bread. But then COVID hit, right? And how these people have behaved in COVID, I have goosebumps. I am so proud to know them. I am so proud to be able to have them here on the show, because for so many people who in COVID were like, I don't know. I had something, I don't have this. I don't know what to do. And I have watched people's lives change in COVID because they had access to skills and IBT. So I love these people. So let's bring them in here. Let's get them in here. We've got Kathleen and Sam who are joining us. And in both cases, I don't want to slaughter their last names. So Kathleen, I want to start with you. I've known you forever, but I don't want to slaughter your last name. I'm wiping away the tears here. I get emotional about it. Tell us what your full name is and what your title is at Skills Global.
Certainly. Good morning. I'm Kathleen Pelias, rhymes with the boy's name Elias, and I am the product manager at Skills Global.
Well, thank you. And I love these, like, are those Mickey ears on the back?
Mm-hmm.
Those are so fabulous. And then Sam is also joining us. And Sam, I don't want to slaughter your name. So tell us what your full name is and what your position is at Skills Global.
Good morning, Shannon. My name is Sam Agabi, and I am an account executive here with Skills. We're certainly excited to be here. You've certainly been the talk of Skills Global here for the last 2 weeks or so.
Oh, dear. I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing, but I know that I love you guys and I love what you do. Sometimes it's hard to describe to people what you guys do because Skills Global, what you guys do encompasses so many different things that I think that's the biggest problem, is saying to people definitively what it is. I tell people it's the online toolkit for autism, but that does not even begin to cover it. So who wants to be the person to say generally explain to people what Skills Global is?
You know, I'd be happy to jump in here, Shannon. Ultimately, Skills Global is going to be a one-stop shop for anyone working with a learner on the spectrum. And I feel that that term is lightly used within the technology community in ABA, where with Skills, we really do have everything: an assessment linked to a curriculum. We have the trainings. Things of that nature make us that complete ABA workflow. And in particular for for our parents, Skills is going to enable them to be the therapists themselves, right? And you really touched on that commitment to excellence that ABA demands. You know, no clinician can tell us when a kiddo is going to achieve a skill, but what we can control is our energy and effort and enthusiasm that goes into teaching. What Skills will give us is everything that we need to be the teacher and the therapist ourselves.
Which is amazing. Any day of the week, that's amazing. But in COVID, it's especially amazing. Should we talk about what your COVID response is, or do you want to go through what some of the different things, some of the different tools that you guys offer? What do you want to talk about first?
I think that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kathleen.
Well, I think it's, in talking about what we offer, it's important to mention that everything is based in these, in 30 years of clinical research and expertise. And it's that knowledge that backs the products that we make, whether we're talking about skills with an assessment and a curriculum, or we're talking about IBT, which offers training courses for parents and professionals on the spectrum. I think it's important to remember that the quality that we bring has 30 years of clinical research and expertise behind it.
Absolutely. But I really want to make sure people know too, that the things that you guys do, and you touched on this a little bit, Sam, parents can use this. But it's not just parents that can use this, teachers can use this, and professionals in the ABA world can and do use skills and IBT. So it's all different levels that can use it. And I love that you guys have a way that things are geared towards those different professionals. Because if you're a parent, let's be honest, you could be watching the show and learning the jargon, but sometimes, you're at the beginning and you really aren't interested in knowing everything that an expert knows. So you guys have things that are just for parents. But for those parents who are like those rock star parents who go, okay, I went through all of the trainings, I understand how I'm using skills, I want to know the more advanced skills, I love the fact that you guys allow them access to that and say, equal opportunity here. What do you want to learn? I think that that is just one of the 1,000 things that I find remarkable about you guys. But let's talk about COVID, because this has been, I mean, what's the word that we want to use? This has been remarkable. I don't think anybody foresaw that we were going to be in this circumstance. And now we are just getting ready to crest the 1-year mark, and we're not done. And for families who have one or more person on the autism spectrum, this really put a crimp in services. We worked so hard in the early aughts to make sure that people had access to insurance. We had just gotten to 50 states here in the United States that had mandates to pay for ABA therapy. And then all of a sudden, people lost their therapy. Talk to us about why IBT and skills have been so important in COVID, and some of the things that you guys have done to make sure that people had access.
Absolutely, Shannon. We've definitely gone through a turbulent year here ourselves at Skills, and we feel the pain. It's been a battle. In regards to skills specifically, we have to remember that the assessment is based on psychometric research. So immediately, our parents are taking the role of the BCBA, how great it is to assess our own child, right? We're going to link that particular assessment directly to a teaching curriculum that's in layman terms. And whether it's parents that are not comfortable in proceeding with telehealth, or that are in rural areas, or that simply cannot afford ABA services, it's a resource that will, again, enable us to not only become the therapist, but do the assessment ahead of time. And what many times I challenge my parents to understand is what it takes to put together a curriculum for a kiddo. Right, where our BCBAs are using multiple assessment tools, going back and writing SDs and responses, and spending thousands of hours at times doing such, right? Where skills makes the magic happen in that sense, where we have the curriculum in-house. Now, for viewers of your show, of course, we are offering a discount into Skills, our clinical software. And in regards to IBT, we're constantly keeping up here and updating the specific courses that we're offering. Currently, for our parents, we are offering school readiness skills, and for our educators, impact on the classroom. And again, it's a guide, and our team of BCBAs put together, create, and produce these trainings, and they are audience specific, right? Meaning if we're speaking to a parent, that in particular is the audience that we're creating that training for. And we want them to be fun. We want them to be engaging. We want you to follow along. And we continue to encourage viewers to reach out to us and to tune into your show to see what updates we're making and continue to make.
Wonderful. And Kathleen, we had a viewer who just logged in, and they were like, I want to know, can we reintroduce Kathleen? And I love, we've already got other viewers who are saying that you are the project manager at Skills, that you're driving software development. Can you talk to us just for 2 seconds about what that means? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, absolutely. As a product manager, my role is to oversee the product lifecycle of the different products that we produce. So that means planning for a new product and overseeing its development, its testing, its release, its maximization, and eventually its retirement. Its retirement is part of that life cycle. So we build it, we use it, and then we kill it. And I, on a day-to-day basis, talk with the different skills customers and IBT customers about what new features they might like to see, what new material might they like to have in IBT, and then we plan for it. So it's a job I really like, because I get to talk to people who use our products each and every day, and then I get to teach the development team how to build what we need. I'm not a developer, and they're not ABA specialists, so we get to have conversations about why something is needed in the software, really are we addressing so that it's built properly. And it's a real gift that I get to imagine, I get to interpret, and I get to really drive and oversee the development of each and every one of our products, as well as our enhancements, and maintain the softwares on routine basis.
Which is incredible and absolutely wonderful, and I thank you for everything that you're doing. I kind of just want to go through, because I think that, you know, sometimes we get you know, we're talking so high above, and people go, but I don't know what I would do with this. So for all of the parents that are sitting at home and you're like, I don't know how to teach my child, I don't know what to teach my child. So the IBT, which is the Institute for Behavioral Training, has a whole plethora of videos that you can choose from to learn how to teach, the how of the thing. And they have, you know, I think the dream team of experts. These are e-learning video modules that are so fascinating. I love how inexpensive they are. Like, you couldn't, if you wanted to go take a college class on something, you would have all of these different difficulties, that it wasn't the subject quite that you wanted, because there would be this big overview and you'd be like, no, I just want to know how to teach my child how to, for instance, mand. You know, how do I get my child to request things? And you wouldn't want to go take a whole college class to be able to do that. You just want to know how to do that. You'd love to have an expert to sit directly in front of you and explain, this is how we do this. Here are the important points that we do it. And you might want to rewind so that you could watch it again and again and again. And then you might go, this was so great, I'd like to bring my babysitter in and have them watch it. This is exactly what you can do with IBT. And you can pick the time that you're doing. It's all self-directed so that people can be watching it at 3 o'clock in the morning. But give us the idea about, because people go, oh, but there's a cost for it. So if you're paying for the college course for it, that would be really expensive. If you bought a book for it, a book would cost you what? At least, you know, $25 at this point. But what's the range right now on what they pay for? How much is it to pay for an IBT module?
You know, Shannon, we have courses that run for $7.50. And I think it comes back to what you mentioned. What's most important to the kiddo? What's most important to the family? And that's a common theme that I look upon for either IBT or skills. For IBT, we want to drill down to the specifics and begin there and begin to grow, right? Grow from that point. With skills, we can teach approximately 4,000 skills. Right. So what is it that you want to identify? And let's start there. You know, we'll sit our parents down with our training team so that you can learn how to become the software expert. My advice and recommendation is to pick 3 to 5 skills, begin to work there with your child, learn how to become the therapist. And we also have to remember that the kiddo is going to be in a period of adjustment where, wow, mom is working with me like this now, or dad is working with me like this now.
But the IBT videos will teach you about that, about overcoming some of that, dealing with that.
Absolutely.
We got people, hang on one second, Sam. We got people writing in saying IBT is amazing, exclamation point. I've learned so much. We have started ABA ourselves while we were on a waiting list, life-changing for us. Another person says, I love skills and IBT. I can attest for both. I use IBT for my RBT course and passed my exam on the very first try. So you've got some other fans besides me who are here. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we always want to interrupt for compliments. But you were saying, Sam?
No, you're absolutely fine. And I think it was speaking to that point of accreditation. Our videos are made with care, right? And they are made with the intent to help. And that's why we're currently doing what we're doing to help support the community. You know, we're not in particular getting anything out of this. What we want to do, most importantly, is to support the community in this time of turbulence.
Wonderful. I do want to address, we've got a couple of questions that are here, but then I want to talk a little bit about skills, you guys. So one of our viewers has said, we are a skills member, but we're not card because of our location. Our 8-year-old with ASD does get ABA, and I'm trying to get the BCBA to work with skills. Right now, I print things I think he hasn't mastered, and I take them to the BCBA, and the BCBA tells me if they are mastered or not. Is this what we should be doing to continue guiding his therapy? And thanks for what you do. Oh, Kathleen, you are muted. Can you unmute
Not
yourself?
anymore.
There we go. Thank you.
I think that question came from Johanny. And the neat thing about skills is that it's going to ascertain what your child needs to learn. When you complete the assessment, you're telling skills what your child can and cannot do. And then skills says, well, based on what information you've given the program, here are activities to teach those skills that your child needs to learn. And here is a logical order to teach them in. So I think it would be a great idea to share the skills assessment, the results of the skills assessment at the lesson level. And if you go on the left-hand side of the screen to the progress tab, there is a lesson assessment link that will show you what percentage for each and every lesson in skills. And those of you that use skills, you know, that's a lot of lessons. And you can also print out suggested activities. So when you go to the treatment section for each curriculum, there are 8 different curricula in the skills program, you're going to see a list of activities. Now, this is a menu. You couldn't possibly teach all of these activities at one time, but it is presented in a suggested sequence for instruction. And if you click on each, it'll show you what the prerequisite skills are as well. So you can ensure that you're teaching these skills in the appropriate order. And I would suggest sharing that with your BCBA. And here's something that's really cool about skills. You pay for skills by child, not user. So you can absolutely go to the admin section of your skills software and add another user. That way the BCBA themselves can log into the skills system, can contact us for training on how to use it, and access all of the information, all of that award-winning curriculum and the program to help assist your child with their learning.
How sweet is that? Because I think that that's really remarkable, and I would really encourage you to do that with the BCBA and show them what it is that you're doing. Because here's the thing: the BCBAs that are using skills will tell you that there's a slight learning curve to be able to use the software, but once they get it, and it's very quickly, they go, oh my gosh, where has this been my whole life? It supercharges what they are able to do, and they can get things done faster. So absolutely, you know, there are so many more ABA providers and BCBAs who are using skills because it allows them to do what they do and takes away a lot of the things that they have to stress over. But I think it's like the cape. It gives them the ability to be the superhero. They're still driving the bus, but all of the things that are hard for a BCBA, I think skills makes it easier for them. So I don't think it's anything that they wouldn't be thrilled about taking a look at, is basically what I'm saying.
I think it's good to mention, sorry.
No, you go right ahead.
I think it's good to mention too that something that we offer that nobody else does is the training. Call us. There's a link in the software itself where you can send us a little note that says, I'd like to learn about skills. And one of our implementation specialists, we have a terrific implementation staff that are all experts in the skills system, and they'll set up a one-on-one appointment with you over video chat. and screen share to train you how to use the system. There are videos in the system itself to train different portions of it. But if you need someone to show you how to use it, we've got someone to show you how to use it.
There we go. And I just want to say about the skills assessment from the point of view of a parent, there are so many things that skills can do, right? I always say it's like Disneyland, and that, you don't go to Disneyland and go, I'm going to try to do everything in Disneyland in 4 hours. You can't. And you wouldn't enjoy yourself if you did try to do that. But I think it's great to start with skills and just use one thing at a time and learn what it does and to have the benefit of it. And then when you say, okay, now next I need this other thing. So the assessment is a great place to start. How many of us are sitting in a place where we're like, I wish I knew where my child was. I wish that an expert could tell me that your child, we talk all the time about where is their expressive language, where is their receptive language, which one is higher, because we can teach more effectively if we know. But the reality of being a parent is that you try to find an expert who will pin down and show you exactly where your child is. They don't want it. They don't want to give you that information. Skills, the assessment gives you exactly that information. You answer questions. And as Sam said, this has been researched and it's been found to be wildly effective that a parent can answer these questions and have it be a very accurate depiction of where the child is. So, which I just think that it is the most brilliant thing. It alone could, on its own, would be life-changing if you just do the assessment to know where your child is. I would say we go to the mall and the mall says you are here on maps. Every place you are here, and oh, okay, I'm here. I'm at JCPenney. I want to get to Macy's, and you can chart your course. Nobody wants to tell us my child is right here. Skills, if you'll take the time, it's an investment in yourself and in your child. If you'll take the time to answer the questions, you will get an accurate depiction of here is where your child is, and you will be a more effective teacher, and everybody on their team will be more effective. You will stop wasting time teaching something that is not what your child needs to learn right now. So I love the skills assessment for this. Absolutely love it. And skills gives you the ability to do that on your time, which is a really wonderful thing. But then once you know where your child is, then you do want to chart the course. And skills has, I mean, I remember a time when we were saying it had over 4,000 targets. I'm sure it's well beyond that now. What would you estimate, you guys? Is there even a number now, or is it just off the chart?
Between the two skills programs, skills developing for children and skills living for teens transitioning to adulthood and for adults, we're looking at about 6,000 activities. And within that, you would have thousands of targets. Individual teaching targets were probably well up into the range of 10, 15, 20,000 individual targets. Sky is the limit on that because you can add your own as well. So if you're teaching individual targets in a lesson, say non-vocal imitation, sure, there are about 30, 35, maybe 40 targets there in the lesson for you. But if there are other actions that you would like to teach your child to imitate, you can add as many as you like. Sky's the limit.
Okay. Somebody's asking, I would love one-on-one help to use skills. I'm comfortable with IBT. However, skills is like Disney World because Disneyland is smaller. So I love that distinction. Thank you for correcting me. It's like Disney World because it does have different, I think maybe you're right, Disney World. Yeah. But so is there, and let's answer this question in two different ways. Is there one-on-one help for skills if you are a card family? And is there one-on-one help with skills if you are not a card family?
If you are a card family, I recommend talking to your child's clinical supervisor. And if you are a non-card family, you're going to click a button on the left side of the screen of any page of skills that says request training. You can call us at 877-975-4559. Leave us a message. We're not in the office right now, so leave us a message and we will get back to you to schedule that training. You can send us an email at training@skillsglobal.com and one of our implementation specialists will respond to you and set up a one-on-one training.
Okay. Traven, can you put that number back up on the screen again? Because correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, that's the same number if they want to get any of the free IBT training or training modules, or if they want to get the discount. If you're watching Autism Live and you want to get a 10% discount on skills, all you have to do is say you saw it on Autism Live. I always tell them, say you're friends with Shannon, tell them you want the friends and family discount. Because I think that's hilarious. I don't know why I think that's hilarious, but I'm just weird that way. There is no friends and family discount, but let's pretend there is. But there is a 10% discount if you're watching us on Skills. So maybe that is the friends and family discount. And you can also get access to those every week on Ask Dr. Doreen. We talk about the free training that's being offered for caregivers and the free training that's being offered that week for educators. And then we also talk about your wonderful RBT training. But somebody else says all of the parent modules are so helpful. I think it's so helpful. I have them and they help us so much, which is really wonderful. So we really love that you guys are using them, because in COVID, this is there's a real need, you guys, and you're filling a need. I just think that's one of the highest callings, to fill a need. Okay, so I want to talk though for a second that you do the assessment on skills, and that's wonderful, but then you want to know what to teach, and you can move over into the curriculum. And depending on if there's skills living, and what did you say that the other one is called? Is that skills growing? What is the younger one?
Developing.
Skills developing. Okay, so depending on the age of the individual, you would be in skills developing, or if it was an older individual, what's the cutoff age, Kathleen, for skills living?
Well, there's not really a definitive cutoff age, because it depends on where your learner is as compared to the developmental norms, right?
Okay.
So, but if we need to specify an age, about 12 to 13 years old would be a terrific time to transition over to skills living. For a learner that's 14 years old, as you know, at least here in the state of California, along with an IEP, we also have to start developing their plan for transitioning to adulthood. So that's a terrific time to bring on skills living, because you have a lot of life skills types of activities in there: how to catch a bus, how to call an Uber or a taxi, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of great stuff in there for adults.
Love it. But that's all the things that are skill acquisition. And what I truly love about it is that I'm a former teacher, and when my child wasn't learning, on my worst day, I thought that my child was incapable of learning. And I learned that with the same curriculum, my son had the curriculum that is in skills. I learned that my child could learn, but then I didn't know where to start. So the CARD assessment, or I had services through CARD who were using skills and IBT. But you don't have to be a CARD family to have access to that. You can use the skills assessment to know where your child is, and then begin to look at what's age appropriate, what's skill appropriate for them to learn, to acquire all the skills that they need. But there's a whole other part of skills that is about behavior intervention and having a behavior intervention plan. So tell us a little bit about what that area of skills looks like, because it's brilliant. It's genius.
Thank you, Shannon. Specifically with our BIP module, it is a research and evidence-based tool within skills that's first going to help us identify the hypothesized function of behavior. Why is my child exhibiting such behavior? And we're going to sync the hypothesized function of behavior to research-based interventions that we can use for teaching. And across skills, I like to describe it as a Google library of ABA. What skill is it that we want to teach? We would be able to identify that skill and any prerequisites that come before to make sure that we're on appropriate track for progress. And same thing with our BIPs, where we can go ahead and enter into skills the target behavior And it will populate with a series of 35 questions where we would indicate our level of agreement with a particular statement. And those series of questions, again, are going to provide us with the hypothesized function of behavior. Now, this is a clinical-based tool, and we will advise for our parents to consult with a clinician in regards to the BIP. Now, a potential workaround here is through the Institute of Behavioral Training, we have modules specific to behavior management and overcoming challenging behaviors. In the last few years here, I've met with hundreds of families that adore you and adore your show. And of course, I tend to agree. And really, it's specific to the family. I do have families that we partner with that have a BCBA in-house, where they have a team of analysts in-house, where they're working together. And you touched on this a bit earlier. Skills allows for that multidisciplinary approach to teaching. Kathleen mentioned that we can have as many users as we want on one account for one child, be it mom, dad, grandpa, school psychologist, speech therapist, etc. As we are based on developmental norms, we can all be on the same page here. And that efficiency within skills is really what's helping us achieve that type of fidelity that we're looking for.
And we're running out of time here. We literally have 30 seconds here. But if people want more information, where do you want them to go?
I would recommend that they email us directly at training@ibehavioraltraining.com. You can reach us at 877-975-4559. And I kindly suggest to book a demonstration with us. We want to hear your story. We do care. And we're going to tailor a demonstration according to your needs and specify and work with you in regards to what may be the best fit for you and your kiddo.
Wonderful. We did have somebody who wrote in who had sent me an email the other day. They saw on the show about the RBT training. I just want to say to Sajal, I batch those. So I just got that email to them yesterday. It's not Skill's fault. It's my fault. They just got the request yesterday and you should be hearing from them very soon. There's so much where everybody's saying you need to come back because we barely gotten through things. You know why we barely got through things? Because I get so excited talking about it and I took all the time. But it's true. I love me some skills in IBT. And why do I love it? Because I think it gives the power to the person who wants the information. And that's what we need in this day and age. So I love you guys. I love what you do. I think that it has the power. I know it has the power to change lives. I've watched it happen. So let's have you come back. Let's talk more about the wonderful things that you guys do, because I could talk about skills and IBT all day and all night and be really excited. Maybe that's what I should do for a weight loss program, is just talk about skills and IBT so that I have no time to stick anything in my mouth. All right. Absolutely adore you guys. Thank you so much. Give our love to everybody on the team for the wonderful things that you're doing for families around the world. Definitely. What's the best website to go to, you guys?
Skillsforautism.com.
And that's the word for, not the letter for, correct?
Correct.
Skills for, F-O-R, autism.com. And then you can also go to ibehavioraltraining.com. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to push buttons and look, you guys, and ask for help and support. These people love to be helpful and supportive. All right, you guys, we adore you. We got to sign off. We're past the time now. I want to remind everybody we're back tomorrow live with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and we're going to do a research update that I think you guys are going to love. But until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Bye, Kathleen. Bye, Sam. Thank you.
Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning, Nancy, and good morning to everybody that's out there. Welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Nancy.
And I'm so grateful to be here with you this morning, Nancy. I have a question for you that I'm just going to throw this curveball at you because I am talking to somebody later on, and I know that you were brilliant and started a special needs ministry at your church.
Yes.
And I feel like I've had several people recently talking about how they really would like something at their church. And I'm just wondering if you would be willing, as a consultant to go into a church and help them to figure out how to set that up.
Sure. It's relatively simple. We just we did it on Saturdays at 5 o'clock, and I could talk to them about what we did for our service. We had a lot of contemporary music, and we also followed it with a meal that was gluten-free and dairy-free for the kiddos. And everybody brought things, so it was kind of like potluck. But I did that for a couple of years, and obviously with COVID, we're not doing it anymore.
Right. But what I recall is that you had this thing, and all of the families that qualified, in at least in their hearts as special needs families, would come and participate at that event. But what I recall, Nancy, is that you got other people from your church community to participate and be there, and that it was an opportunity for them to get to know the family, get to know the kids, and get to be outside of the regular church service. Because sometimes it's our kids in the church service that, you know what I mean, about how people turn and give you that death glare when your kiddo is making a noise and you're like, I'm at church.
Right.
Like, this is the place where I would like to feel no judgment from the fellowship.
Yeah.
So I think that in particular, and as much as, in COVID, it's really hard to do some of these things, although we hope that as the year progresses that it'll be easier to do them. But I think that even that aspect of it, I think that could potentially be done even in COVID on Zoom. And that maybe there's a possibility that it would actually be a smidge easier, because I do know that especially a lot of older folks, they're very noise sensitive, and sometimes our kids are, if our kids have a stim where they make noise, that can be very disruptive for the elderly folks. But on Zoom, you can mute that.
Right.
So I'm wondering if, so I'm going to pick your brain later on.
Okay, great.
Because I know you're a leader in this area. But anyway, hey, everybody, we're really excited about the show today and excited to be here with you. We are live on several different platforms. We're live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And we are encouraging you guys to be writing in on those 3 platforms. We are also live on sites, and we encourage you to also write in on those platforms. But I will tell you, it's a lot harder for us to get your comments this week. I don't know if that will change in the future, but we're already saying good morning to Becca, who's watching on YouTube, to Nasser and Mary, and to Avani on Facebook. So good morning to all of you. Now, if you want to watch the show later on, we continue to have this show recorded on those big 3 later on. Good morning to Alexis. I'm going to address that in just a second. Thank you. So if you're watching us recorded though, and it's not on those big 3, let me just tell you, we're available every place you get your podcast, and it's free. We're a free download. We encourage you to choose. Do you want to watch it and listen, or do you just want to listen? We're available, like I said, everywhere. If you can't find us where you get podcasts, please let us know, because we would like to be where you get your podcasts. Saying hello to Lucy. And Lucy, I'm so bad at the abbreviations. Nancy, is that Michigan?
It's
Michigan. Michigan. So thrilled that you're here with us, Lucy. All those M states I get confused about, is MA Massachusetts or is it Maine? You know what I'm saying? I think Maine is MN. How do I get off on this tangent?
I think Maine is ME. Maine is ME, I think.
ME?
ME. ME.
ME. So there we go. It's all confusing to me. But Lucy's here from Michigan, we believe. So thrilled to have you here, Lucy. But anyway, back to the podcast. Please make sure that find us where you need to. But if you're watching us in podcast and want to write in because you have a question, you can do that on our homepage, which is autism-live.com. There's a chat button at the bottom. You open it up and you type what you want, and it shows up on our chat site. It is not an automatic responder. You're not going to get a bot who immediately writes you back. In fact, there is no way. It's not interactive. We can only see it. We can't write you back. So if you want us to write you back or call you, you need to leave that information. It's private. Nobody but me gets to see it. And you can also always email me. Oh, Lucy, do you get confused about the MEMI? Oh, so I feel better about that then. So Alexis said you should get someone on from this disability ministry sometime, maybe even do an interview swap with them with your son. So that would be interesting, Nancy, to have somebody from disability ministry to come on. And I think that you and Wyatt speaking about your ministry would be absolutely fabulous. I know you guys aren't doing it right now, but talking about how you start it,
Right.
I think we need to do more information on that at some
And
point.
Shannon, we did have a lot of people from our church that volunteered, that brought food and volunteered to come to the service. And so it was a way for them to get familiar with autism and some other disabilities.
Well, and as I recall, one of the things that I noticed about it too, Nancy, is that you had some of the elderly folks that showed up, and
Yes.
I remember thinking, isn't this interesting that we're doing this so as a service for you were not we, but you're doing it as a service for the special needs community to feel like they have a home at the church, that they have fellowship, and the added thing of having other people from the fellowship join. But I noticed that there were some people who probably don't have a big social life that were so thrilled to be there. They were so thrilled to have a place to go.
Yes.
So that there were just so many ways that it was of service to your community.
And we called it the exceptional families rather than a disability ministry.
There you go. I love that. Hey, Lucy says, I'm a mom of a 12-year-old as well with Discovery Toys. I talk about Discovery Toys on the show because I happen to love them. And we end up every year we review a bunch of toys and we do a toy guide. The toy guide is available right now for the 2020 year, is available right now on our website. If you go to autism-live.com, and at the top there's a little icon that says toy guide. If you click on it, you can see all the toys that we picked from this last year. And it's amazing to me because at some point I'm going to have picked the entire catalog from Discovery Toys because they're just really good toys. You know how when you used to watch like Baby Einstein videos, Nancy, did you do those with what? And sometimes they would just have these like toys that you would look at them and you go, oh, okay, these are really high quality individual toys. Where do you get those toys? I was like, what toy store are they at? I love a good toy store, and I was never seeing those toys. And then I found out it's because a lot of them are Discovery Toys. So check them out. Lucy, if you want to, because I know it's one of those things where you have to find a dealer, somebody who deals with Discovery Toys. Lucy, if you want to on Facebook, put your link there. So if people want to check out Discovery Toys, you can help them to do that. And she bought some of the other toys that we had from other, I love the toy guide. The toy guide is one of the most stressful, but most fun times of the year for me. I'll tell you what I like better is when we get to give away all the samples. That's my more fun thing. But playing with the toys is super fun. Nancy knows that I love playing with toys. There we go. And Lucy, so if you're listening and you're like, I don't know about Discovery Toys, go on our Facebook for this show. And Lucy just put up her link. You can go to the website. You can check out toys. And if you want to buy one, you buy one through Lucy. So why not? I love it when we support each other. So Nancy, we've got some news stories, some that are more sadder than others. Let's say that. But can we start? I'm going to go out of order a little bit.
Okay.
Can we start with the one about anorexia?
Yes, that's not out of order. That's the first one.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
So
this is an actual study, is it not, Shannon? That you
yes.
found.
Yeah, I love on Spectrum News. They now have a community newsletter where they'll consolidate I don't know about you, Nancy, but every morning I get my thing from the New York Times where it sort of consolidates all of the news for the
Right.
last 24 hours.
Right.
And it basically gives me headlines, and then I can go in and click and I can pick to go in depth on any of the headlines.
Right.
But it
Right.
just, for a busy person, it gives you an overview. Well, I love that Spectrum is starting to do that for the autism community. And
Oh,
that's how I got hip to this story. But we're talking about anorexia, and this is the thing that I don't know that I knew this until Dr. Granpichet told me this, like, I don't know, 2-3 years ago. Did you know that there is a higher incidence of anorexia in the female autism community? Did you know that that was a thing?
I did not know that. And according to this article, it's 20 to 30% of women in treatment display diagnostic features characteristic of autism. That's a huge percentage.
So of all the people who display anorexia symptoms, 20 to 30% of them also may not have a full diagnosis, but exhibits characteristics of autism. But it's also true the other way too, that if you have, especially, this doesn't leave out boys, but especially for the girls, if you have a girl who's on the autism spectrum, that you need to keep an eye on because statistically they are much more likely to have some form of anorexia nervosa, which is a very concerning thing. And what this study, what I gleaned from it, and thank goodness we have Leah Hirschfeld joining us later, who's so much better at research. But what I gleaned from it, Nancy, is that because this number is so high, that they really need to be looking at the ways in which they treat anorexia, because they're not taking what someone who is on the spectrum, how they experience therapy. Is that what you got from it?
That's what I got from this study, exactly. That they need to approach it through the lens of possibly having somebody on the spectrum, dealing with a young woman on the spectrum, when they have the diagnosis of anorexia nervosa.
And if you think about it, the first time that Dr. Granpichet explained to me and said that, anorexia is very much a thing in the autism community, it comes sort of under that heading of the ritualistic behaviors. That, we see our kids sometimes line up cars on the floor, or they're like, we have to go down this street to get to the school and we can't go down that street. That very, I must do it this way, I can't do it another way thinking. If that gets transferred over to food and to body image is when you find yourself in some, serious waters with the potential of anorexia nervosa. But how amazing is it they're starting to go, well, hey, if this is a significant portion of the population, then we should be looking at how they experience treatment and potentially changing treatment as a result of that. So I'm glad that they're at least looking at this, and that we have a trend in this where we're looking at healthcare for people on the spectrum and taking into consideration their point of view.
Yes.
Which doesn't that feel like the biggest duh in the world? Like, why did it take us so long to get here? But at least we're starting to get there.
Right.
Now, Nancy, because I want to end with the Able Coffee story that you brought. But we have, because I know that this other that we're going to cover is such sad news.
Yes. Very sad news.
That we covered a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
That Christopher Miller, who was a wonderful 19-year-old wonderful advocate, had an accident, and that he subsequently passed away. Just a devastating thing. And I didn't realize when we covered it the last time, we were talking about how it was an accident where he fell off the back of the truck. We now have more information about it. And I think appropriately, the family has asked for an investigation to figure out why this happened, because it seems like something that really should not have happened.
Right. He was in the back of a truck, a pickup truck.
he was working and as part of a program and was loading things onto the back of the truck, but the truck then drove away and he was standing on the back of the truck and fell because anybody who's ever been in a homecoming parade and been on any kind of a float, if you're not holding on and a vehicle moves, bad things are going to happen. And he did fall from the truck. He hit his head, and when we last spoke about it, they were still hoping that after they got him off of certain medications where they're going to be able to be brain waves. That is not what happened, and he subsequently passed away. But I'm looking to see where I can find it on his Facebook page,
Right.
and they still are taking donations for the family and for his burial, but they posted.
I can read that statement, Shannon.
Okay, I just found it, but if you'd like to go for it, Nancy, you go right ahead.
From his Facebook page, what I want you to know. My name is Christopher Ryan Paul Miller. I want you to know I was amazing. I overcame hardships and hurdles throughout my short life that few could compare. I had dreams, lots of them, to become a forest ranger, a pro fisherman, a historian, and one day even a husband and father. I was a comedian. I loved bringing laughter to those I loved with my crab walks and tummy jiggles. I loved Olive Garden, Red Lobster, and Rubens from Arby's. I loved music, especially the oldies like Billy Joel and Buddy Holly. I loved fishing and hunting and loving all animals. I was strong, brave, adventurous, and courageous. I had no fear. I was Captain Spectrum, a hero for the ones born with intellectual and physical disabilities. I was always full of love and always looking for ways to help others. My smile was beautiful and contagious. I was misunderstood and complex, but patient and kind. I loved so deeply and fervently. I cared for the world I lived in and the people around me. I want you to know I loved and I was loved. Love, Christopher. And then it says, my journey and advocacy work will continue from my family, friends, and my brother Curtis, who is also autistic. They will all make sure that Captain Spectrum and I live on to help them. Such a beautiful statement.
Yes, and I'm glad that his family, they're doing as well as I think that they can do. I'm glad that they're asking questions. It is so important that we make sure that what happened to him does not happen to somebody else. But thanks for reading that, Nancy. That was really lovely. And then our last story today, to kind of give us, after something so emotional, to give us something really hopeful. That's why I wanted to do the stories in this way. And this was a story that you brought to my attention, Nancy. Tell us about this wonderful and why this really resonated with you.
I love this story. In Huntington Beach, California, there is a coffee shop and coffee business, because they also deliver, they have carts that go around, and it's called Able Coffee. And that reflects what it is. The blend is confidence and purpose, in addition to some really great coffee. Two special needs teachers from Huntington Beach, one with a background as a behaviorist, the other as a background as a teacher. I think they both were teachers at the Irvine Unified School District, and their names are Anthony Palmieri and Adil Asif. They wanted the idea of creating a space where people like the students they worked with could find employment, because they noticed that a lot of the kids were aging out at the age of 22. As we know, that's when my son's going to age out of the system as well. And parents oftentimes don't, and students don't know where to turn to next. So they created this coffee shop, and it's got all kinds of cool things that tie in, like the names of the coffee. Sensory latte is one that somebody likes to order, a regular there. And they have other autism friendly um, decor. The mirror in the restroom is shaped like a puzzle piece. The blue color motif extends from the walls to the coffee maker. So this is a really cool idea that these two young men have come up with.
Really amazing. And I don't know about you, but Nancy shared this story with me the other day, and I took one look at it. And I don't know why, but all this week, Joanne Laura has been very present in my thoughts for many different reasons. But I certainly thought of Joanne because this is precisely, it's probably because a year ago this week, this is precisely what Joanne was working on, was that she was trying to open a coffee shop here in Los Angeles, because, you know, she had Glorious Pies, that was a truck that would go to events, but they were doing so many events that they wanted to open a storefront and have it be a brick and mortar coffee shop. And that was something she was desperately trying to do, hoping that she had longer to be on this planet. That was not meant to be. And we can all have our feelings about that because, you know, Joanne passed away in June, very beginning of June last year. And there is no coffee shop. And I'm hoping that at some point that will still come to pass, because I know how much it meant to Joanne. And this kind of work, you know, I don't know how you feel about this, Nancy, because I know Wyatt worked for Autism Works Now and worked on the Glorious Pies truck. And, you know, we've been in COVID now for quite a while, and everything sort of stopped when COVID, you know, on March 13th. But there's at least one of the young people who worked at Glorious Pies who calls me just to check in. And I think it's part of Joanne passing that Joanne was like, call Shannon now. Shannon will take your call, and we chat on the phone and have become friends. And he said to me the other day, he said, I just want to get back to work. That's all I want to do. I want to get back to work. And it's important for me to work. And I know so many people who feel that way. And I just want to remind everybody that what Joanne always taught me, that folks on the autism spectrum want and deserve that too. And anytime we can hire and be cognizant of that, and it's not just the high functioning people, folks. I used to think that. I was like, well, not everybody with autism is going to have a job. And Joanne would, you know, say to me, you know, where's that thinking coming from? Like, everyone deserves to have a job. And then I got to see it in action when she would do it. And it was something that changed how I viewed the world. To see
she had the full range of the spectrum working at Glorious Pies. All the kids did something, all the young people did something. And at Able Coffee, I think it's worth noting that they employ 15 part-timers, 10 of whom have disabilities ranging from mild to severe. A lot of the more severe, the diagnosis that is severe autism, they do things like stamp the coffee cups. And, you know, there can be a place for everybody at the table, as Joanne said.
That's right. And everybody deserves that. Hey, Nancy, off topic, but somebody wrote in and wants to know, when you did your special needs ministry, was there a pastor that gave a message at the events?
Yes, there was.
Or was there a class that you guys would do, or a topic that you would do?
Not a class, but the head minister, Father Rand Reasoner, would do a message, or Father Onesimus, our assistant pastor, would do a message. So it was a combination of prayer, singing, worship music, and a sermon, and also taking communion.
Love that. Love that. All right. Well, so those are our news stories for today. We jumped around a little. Sorry for that. But, and is Leah here yet? I can't tell, Traven. My computer is having I don't know what. Yes. Oh, she's there. Okay,
yes,
great.
I'm here.
Wonderful. Yes, I see that now. So why don't we welcome her? So Leah Hirschfeld joins us regularly whenever we can have her. And she is from the research arm of the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Leah, I don't see your, there you are. There you are. So thrilled to have you back on the show. Tell us a little bit about what you do in the research arm and what that is at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's always such a highlight to get to come on. So I am a research coordinator here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And, oh, I got my name. And what that means is that I get to spend my day trying to figure out the best ways that we can use our resources most thoughtfully for our families, our patients, and honestly, even our insurance companies, because they're a huge part of it as well. And so what that means is that supervisors will come and ask me questions, and I get to send them back research articles, or I might be helping with a research study design, recruiting participants, running them through a study, and then analyzing the data and writing up a manuscript so that that gets out to the public so that all of our hard work doesn't just stay at card. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. And then of course, monthly I get to come on here. Unless Karen Nolte takes it over, she comes on once every quarter. She's our director of research, so very exciting when you all get her as well. But yeah, that's and it's great fun. It's a cool team to be a part of, and cool family. Card is cool family to be a part of, so it's pretty great.
Well,
Leah,
I love it when you're here because you make sense of things for us. Yeah, and
did you
today,
hear
wait till you hear.
Hold on, Shannon. I was going to ask Leah, what were you saying, Shannon?
No, you go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, I wanted to know if Leah heard our first story from In the News about eating disorders and autism.
I didn't actually. I caught the tail end but this is the second part and was very touched by the coffee shop. I know when I was a behavior technician, we did that at a high school actually, and it was awesome. But I didn't get to hear the first story.
Yeah, Shannon found a study. It was an actual study that linked anorexia nervosa to young women on the autism spectrum, and they found that there was a much higher percentage, 20 to 30%, in fact, were found to have autism as well as an eating disorder.
So maybe something that we can do some more research on later on and have you talk about that. But today, Nancy, I didn't get a chance to tell you this because I had forgotten what we were talking about today. But this was something that you guys had asked about, that she's going to talk with us today about handwriting and its connection, all the research that's been done about handwriting and autism, because this, for some of us, now I know Wyatt has beautiful handwriting. I am so jealous, Nancy. He has absolutely beautiful handwriting and has since I met him. My child, it's an entirely different story. And it has been a struggle. And, so I'm all ears here, Leah. So
absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited. And Shannon, I'm glad you plugged that this is a question we got from a family. So we do take requests on the research team. We prefer it actually. So if there's any questions y'all want answered, we come on once a month, so it might take us a minute to get back to you, but we'd love to hear what you guys want. I think the eating disorders is a very sad topic, but something that needs to be discussed. And I do believe there's a lot of research, or at least some. And I'm certainly happy to dig into that and kind of figure out what that is and talk to Karen more about like clinical interventions and things on that topic. But if there's anyone else that has any other thoughts, any other topics, please send them in. Anyway, so handwriting, super interesting topic. And I will say I was surprised when I got the question, I started researching it. And I know, obviously, right, motor skills is going to be a huge component of handwriting. But then as I was looking more into the research, what was really interesting was just how much goes into handwriting. It is not just motor, right? Like, you also really need to be cognitively aware of what's going on, what your next step's going to be, what if you're going to go up to make that T or over to make that A, and there's a lot. I was just astounded this morning. I was like, it's amazing I can write. So really interesting topic, and there's a lot more there than just motor skills. And it's still really important, right? Like, I know there's a lot more about phones and computers and tablets, and those are awesome, awesome tools. But there's still a lot going on at schools where you need to be able to take notes. You need to be able to read that question on a test. And I think it can be really frustrating for folks if it takes too long to write, or if a teacher constantly asks them what that word is or marks them wrong because they can't read it, right? So it's a really important topic. It can be super frustrating. And now that I've given that whole spiel about why it's so cool, let me tell you about the research article I'm going to talk about. So this is a study that came out in 2019. It's by Rosenblum and colleagues coming out of Haifa, Israel. And what they looked at was, they were like, that's great. Motor skills are super important to handwriting. We have studies already about that. There's a study by Fuentes, which I'm sure I butchered that name, Fuentes, coming out of the Krager Kennedy Institute. And that came out about a decade ago, 2009. And that showed that motor skills are totally predictive of handwriting. Totally makes sense. But what this Rosenblum study wanted to show was, what else is going on, right? We know, like I just said, that handwriting is not just motor. There's all these cognitive functions. Is there something about the cognitive functions as well that is connecting to handwriting that's important? And so what they wanted to look at was really those higher level functions, and so they did. So they took 30 children with autism, and they took 30 children not with autism, and they matched them on age, on school year, on gender, on IQ, and on hand dominance. And that's super important because some people will throw in like, oh, they're a bunch of lefties. I don't know that that's true, that lefties have any bad handwriting, but they made sure hand dominance was everyone was matched. And they also, one of the limitations of the study is that they didn't look at anyone who's nonverbal or anyone who had any other deficits. So everyone was verbal, everyone had basic writing skills, no one had mental or physical impairments that would have also affected handwriting. And the reason for this is that the researchers are really trying to dig just like purely into, you have an autism diagnosis, does that affect your cognitive levels and correlate to handwriting? And just purely that, right? They're not looking at verbal delays or anything like that connection. And so what they did was they had all of the children write a story about other children playing in a yard. And it was a free write, so that, no one was tracing a sentence or anything. And they put a piece of paper on top of a tablet and had a wireless electronic ink pen with a sensitive tip to collect the data. So they wrote on the iPad and all that data got collected onto a laptop. And that information gives you, legibility and how long it was taking to write. And also they were looking at like how long the pen's in the air and all this stuff. There's a lot that goes into handwriting. And then on top of that, they asked parents to fill out a form. These kids are 9 to 12. So they asked parents to fill out a form that looked at cognitive measures for the child. So that's getting into, getting into memory, getting into planning, getting into organization, getting into emotional control, the ability to shift between concepts and activities, which all, as you think about it, really plays a factor in handwriting, right? You have to, okay, I want to do the H next. Like there's a lot going on. And then on top of that as well, so we've got the writing, the measurement of the writing, they've got a measurement of cognitive abilities, and then they also had the children take a test on motor coordination and visual perception. We know motor is gonna play a factor, but then also does visual perception have an effect? Is there something going on with the ability to recognize shapes or something like that that might also have an effect? And so now I get to the good part about what they found. So they found that motor deficits does correlate to handwriting deficits. That's kind of expected. One of the interesting things that they found was that visual perception actually was not different between the groups. And they found a huge variance, a really large variance in the ability of the children in visual perception, regardless of their group, indicating that visual perception actually is probably not a concern. And I know actually, Nancy, I think we've talked about Wyatt before being an artist, and you guys even mentioned he has beautiful handwriting. And one of the things the researchers actually mentioned, and I love that I get to say, because I always come on and talk about like deficits and things, which I wish I had a better word for. But one of the things they talk about is that autistic individuals actually may have a superior visual performance skill set. And I know we've come on and talked about artistry and things like that with autistic individuals. So I was really excited that I get to make that plug. And so on top of that, right, so motor is a big factor, visual probably not as much of a big factor. And now what about those higher cognitive functions, right? So what about memory and things like that and the ability to shift attention? So what was really interesting is they found that the part of memory that deals with manipulating and maintaining information in brief periods of time, that's called working memory. But that memory that you use to really think about the moment, think about like what's going on, what you need to do next, all that stuff. That was a big predictor of handwriting, and only in the autistic group. So they didn't see that part of memory was as much of a factor for our non-autistic group. So super interesting here. We know motor effects are going to be motor problems are going to also affect handwriting, but then on a higher level here, memory also might be playing an effect. And so as a parent, you know, you might be like, we need to focus on motor aspects as well for handwriting. But on top of that, you might be able to also encourage memory, working memory as an option to work on. And one of the other things too that the researchers mentioned is to make sure that the child has enough time during writing tasks. They did find that the autistic group was taking longer during their writing tasks. They have more time with the pen in the air. And that honestly also could be part of memory, right? If they're taking longer to think about, okay, how do I make that H? How do I go up? How do I go down? How do I make that E next? They were writing in Hebrew, but I'm going to say that. And so make sure that your child has enough time when they're doing writing tasks. It's been shown that performance time of written tasks in school also is related to writing quality. So this article didn't talk about like quality of the stories or anything like that. They're just purely talking about handwriting, if it looks different, and things like that. So just make sure, you know, your child has enough time. Motor functions is going to be important, and also potentially memory is going to be important here as well, and kind of looking at handwriting as this whole, all these different things that works. And I'll pause to answer any questions or anything, and then I have one other really cool study to talk about with handwriting, but any questions or anything else?
No, I think I'm good. Nancy, you good?
I was wondering if there's an increased prevalence of low muscle tone with correlated with handwriting and difficulty with handwriting.
I don't think I don't have an answer for that one. They didn't look at it, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah. But it's a good question. It's a great question. I wish they had, but I don't think I didn't see anything on that one.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the other cool thing that I'll mention is this really neat study that I found that just came out last year, 2020. That was by Asgur, which I probably also butchered. No one should let me say last names. But his colleagues used this thing called a cellulo robot. And the reason I didn't launch with this study is because this robot is not in mass production. It's coming out of a research lab. So unfortunately, I don't think parents can buy it or anything. But you can always reach out to the group that's doing the cellulo robots and see if there's something you're interested in. But what they did was they took these robots, which are kind of like a mouse shape, and then they had them programmed to trace a letter, basically. And so the children could watch the letter be traced. Then they could put the hand on the robot and follow it and feel it being traced. Then they could actually move the robot and trace it. And then they also played this really fun game, which sounds fun, called Guess the Letter, where the child would follow or make the letter, and then his peers or her peers would try to guess what the letter is. And this was kind of cool because not only do they make it a game, which is really fun, they also make sure that then the second trial, the child got real-time feedback from their peers to try to make that second attempt even clearer and better so that the children could guess it quicker. So you're not only getting feedback, you're also getting cooperation there. And that study found that the children did gain more knowledge on letters and how to write the letters. Again, this is a robot they're using, so it's not pen and pencil. And it kind of gets away from that potential motor problems that we might see with the letters. And again, it's not in mass production or anything. You can't go out and buy this robot. I don't think. I tried. But it's very, very cool. I want one. They're cool. But it seemed very cool and interesting. And so I thought I'd plug it to parents if this is something that you might be interested in, or if robotics and autism is something that you might be interested in getting your child in. You can look up the cellulo robot, CELLULO, and it'll take you to the lab page and potentially reach out to a lab manager or something. They might get you into a study. But thought that was pretty cool and interesting and wanted to plug it if I had a minute.
So we do have a couple of comments and questions from viewers. Somebody who said my son struggles with writing, and I belong to that club too. It's not all of us, but for those of us that it's a problem, it's a big problem, right? Someone else said my daughter hates to write, and our school has assigned a special teacher now who scribes for her. Seems to clear her mind enough to express what she wants the answers to be, which I think is a really important point. That for me, we were on this trajectory where we were working on writing, and writing was being worked on in conjunction with things in school, and we got to the point where it wasn't working. Where we had to take writing out and say, because my son wasn't learning grammar and things like that because he couldn't get the writing on the page and they couldn't read it to say, you need to put the noun here, and we never got to that. So we had to take writing completely out of so many of his lessons and work on it separately, which was, I got to say, I don't think that the school was really prepared for that. I don't think they had been trained in what, and we still, that's the only issue we have left in school is the handwriting thing. And we removed it. And it, the only accommodation that my son has left is that he gets to use a computer for any task, that he is not expected to handwrite anything. If they hand out a worksheet, he gets to type it on a computer. And he just types, so if it's question number 1, he types 1 and he types the answer for it, not the whole sentence. If he chooses to, he can do the handwriting, but he always has the choice to do the typing. And I really want to say that to parents, because when I think about my son who hated writing, and those of you are like, oh, my child hates to write. And my son has been accepted now to 2 very prestigious college programs for screenwriting and playwriting.
Ooh, congratulations.
This is the kid who had BIPs because he didn't want to write. But when we realized in 5th grade, he wrote a poem and I went, what is this poem? And it was because the teacher had let him type it. And it was the most earth-shattering moment for us. We were like, oh, he has something to say. And the actual, what we think of as writing, which is getting the thoughts on paper, he had that. He still needed being shored up for the grammar, but it was the frustration of writing it that he didn't want to do. Now he can write and he still works on handwriting and it's getting better. But just the other day we saw something that my father had written, and my father had the worst handwriting in the world. And my father was very successful. So it doesn't, look at all the doctors that have terrible handwriting, that can't even read the prescription. Help us all. I just want to say, for some of you who are writing in and saying that your child hates writing, make sure that you are noticing, is it the skill of handwriting or the process of writing, and don't assume that they're the same. But there is somebody who's writing and saying, how do you get them to actually work on the writing? Because the child doesn't want to write. He can read since he was 3. He's 5 right now, does not want to write, starts screaming if you ask him to write. And I know that you weren't asked to do any studies on that, Leah, but is there anything you want? Because I have some suggestions about that, but do you have something too?
I mean, my first thought is if you can try to make it a game, just like that guess the letter, right? If you just try to guess the letter and the whole family's around and you're like, okay, we're just going to try to guess the letter, that might making it a game might make it fun there. But Shannon, I feel like you might even have much more.
So here's the funny thing. Years before I had a child, I used to be a teacher. And a lot of times I worked with kids who were dyslexic. And we didn't have the little colored sheets of paper back then. So what we did was we had little tiny sandboxes, and we went to carpet stores and got swatches, the little samples of carpet that you bring home, and we wanted things that were rough. Just like the sand is rough. And so instead of starting with the tripod grasp, because the tripod grasp, you have to have the pincer grasp first, and you have to have the core muscles to sit up and have this whole arm working to do that. And a lot of our kids and the hand-eye coordination, as Leah was saying, it's too much. So we would start with something that was gratifying for them, which is the touch of the sand or the touch of the carpet, or in some kids, we made chocolate pudding and put it on paper, and they could draw in the pudding. And we had them take one finger and start to draw shapes and have them draw straight lines and squiggles. And with the pudding, if they're not allergic to it, then they can, and that was reinforcing. But the sand for some of the kids made all the difference in the world because it paired a sensation with what they were doing. So we could teach them how to do the letters and how to have them face in the right direction. We did that with Jem, and that helped. Eventually, then we went back to working on the pincer grasp. So we would take raisins, which he liked, and we'd put them on a tray. And with raisins, in order to pick them up, you have to use the pincer grasp, right? And then eventually we would get to the tripod grasp by taking crayons, regular, not the big fat crayons, because if you have the big fat crayons, kids draw with them like this. This is not the tripod grasp. So we would take regular crayons and snap them in half and take the paper off of them. So they're short little crayons. And the only way you can draw with them is to take the pincer grasp. We always had short little golf pencils for him to write with. And then the other thing that we got were wiki sticks. They're like wax covered string. And it's called literally wiki, W-I-K-I sticks, S-T-I-X. Whenever we go to an event, we usually give them away. But you can shape wiki sticks into anything. So our therapists would shape wiki sticks into a J. And so the inside of it, it's like a J. So the inside of it, they put it on a piece of paper. And all my son had to do was stick the pencil, the little golf pencil, in the groove, and he couldn't fail. And then they would pull the wiki stick off, and he would look, and they would show him that he had drawn his name, and they would reinforce him for it. And because he couldn't fail, he was willing to do it. It's exhausting. You can also get stencils to begin with, but giving them success, because why would they want to do it unless they have some measure of success? So there's a wonderful handwriting program that most teachers and schools do now that's called Handwriting Without Tears. And I would also tell you to go on Pinterest and put in fun handwriting activities, because that old thing of just sitting and doing shapes over and over and over again, our kids don't like it. And if they're not successful at it and there's no reward for doing it, why would anyone want to do it? I love lettering, because like, to me, it's like a form of art. It's reinforcing to me, but if it's not to your kiddo, you want to be really careful about that, because it becomes, as you said, aversive. And when it's aversive, you're going to have to start way back at the beginning, work on early skills, and reinforce the hey nani nani out of that thing. But that's just the technical term for it, the hey nani nani thing. There's another question here. In the study, how did the child hold the pencil? In order to write, she has to use the tripod grasp. What, on your study, what did they use?
They didn't specify, I don't think, but my guess is, I mean, these are all Israel, so they said third year of school, so I'm going to say they're third graders. But they're all third year students, 9 to 12. Verbal already had writing skills, so my guess is they're probably using the tripod. They're probably using the tripod grasp there. Would be my guess, but I don't think they specified it.
And Lucy says, I have my son's OT working on it, which is absolutely, those are the people who should be working on handwriting. And you just reminded me that the other way to get kids to develop the tripod grasp is this has to be very supervised, especially if it's a kiddo who puts things in their mouth, but you have them lay on their tummies on carpet. So you can use that carpet swath again. You take pictures from coloring books, cut them out of the coloring book. So it's one piece of paper laying on the carpet with them on their belly. You give them one push pin, and they have to stick the pin in the black line around the outline. And when they're done, they get to tape it to the window, and the window shines through in the design. So that's the reinforcer. But what that does is the only way to hold the push pin to do it is with the tripod grasp, but it also helps kids who don't have the core skills because they have to hold themselves up with one arm and their belly helps to hold them up, but it helps to work their upper torso and they love it. But you have to do it on carpet. Otherwise, it'll be a singular act of frustration. But they used to do that all the time. Somebody else says, my daughter uses twist and write pencils. I don't know the twist and write pencil.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either. So we're all going to have to Google that. But there's all kinds of fun things too that you can add. That, like, there are pencils in different shapes. There are pencil grip things. There are toppers to put on the pencils that jingle or don't jingle, or have feathers or don't have feathers, and have fans or don't have fans. Like, there's all kinds of ways to make that stuff reinforcing. We had to get the SpongeBob SquarePants pencils, right? And then we had to get the electric pencil sharpener because he loved to put the SpongeBob SquarePants into the electric pencil sharpener. You make it like as fun as you possibly can. Mary says you can get the twist and write pencils on Amazon. So everybody that's interested can check that out. But I think it's so fascinating. I know when my son started high school, one of the, as I said, we had it written into his, now it's 504, but at the time IEP that he could use a computer. First day of high school, we get the message from the new social studies teacher who says to parents, by the way, you're all, I know at my son's school, every kid gets a computer to do all their work on. So I was like, this is great. We're not going to have a problem with the handwriting thing. And then the first day that comes home the note saying all students will be required to take their Cornell notes by hand. And this very diligent teacher sends home, you would love this, Leah, she sends home a study with the syllabus saying why you have to take your notes by hand. And this poor woman didn't know who she was dealing with as mom. So I sent back, I said, oh, that's lovely, but here's my study that shows that kids with autism, their pen is off the paper longer, so they miss things and their notes are not effective because of it. So where shall we meet in the middle? And she was a great teacher and read the study because, a lot of teachers would be like, thanks, and not read it. But she read the study and she was like, okay, I don't know what to do now. And we compromised. I read her study and went, I hadn't thought about that. So we agreed that he would take his notes with his own handwriting so that he would have the cognitive connection that she wanted, but that he would not study from his notes. She would give him a copy of the typed notes from which to study.
So he would compromise,
right? So he didn't get left out of taking, good notes. He had the practice of taking the Cornell notes, had that connection. And she was like, oh, that'll work for you. And I was like, yeah, that'll work for me. That works for you. And it was great. And he was successful in the class. So I do encourage parents, it's like, talk it out, be a team. If you have an OT working on the team, they are really the person who has the lion's share of the responsibility for any goals that are on your child's IEP for handwriting. Sometimes, like Nancy, I know you have known some really great OTs over the years. One in particular that you had that was just, sometimes you get the right OT and they are brilliant. They're problem solvers. They're wonderful. And then sometimes you have OTs that aren't worth the piece of paper they're printed on.
And I'll throw in this research. Actually, it was coming out of the Department of OT in Haifa. So OTs can be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I love Pinterest. I don't know if you ladies are on Pinterest. Whenever I need an idea for something, how to teach it to anybody, myself included, I'm on Pinterest. It seems like teachers have really taken to Pinterest, and it's a place where they share information. And sometimes they sell it on Pinterest. Like they'll say, I have this thing that I made and I'll sell it to you for $1.99. I love that stuff. I love supporting a teacher. Yeah, Nancy?
Lucy wrote in and said her OT, I think, and she said, mine seems good. She gave him extended wrist activities.
Oh, there you go. Because maybe that's part of what they're seeing is that the wrist is something. It's different for everybody, right?
Right.
There's so much that goes into it. Wrist, core, head, all of it. It's basically a full body activity.
She's talking about distal mobility activities.
I don't even know what distal
I don't know what
mobility
distal
activities
means.
is. Thank goodness we have OTs to help us with this kind of stuff. And I do love a good OT, man. I absolutely love a good OT. But a lot of that stuff is on Pinterest, you guys. But if it isn't reinforcing, think about like, okay, let's just take a brief poll here. So what when you have downtime, what do you like to do, Leah? I'm putting you on the spot. Like what? Yeah.
I will either run or read or watch TV.
Oh, aren't you evolved? Okay.
It's recorded. I have to say these things.
Okay. Nancy, what about you? What do you like to do with your downtime?
With my downtime, I like to be outdoors, go for a hike or a walk. I also like to read, and I like to watch, the streaming, so Netflix series. I'm always discovering new stuff to watch.
I used to love to read, and I come from a long line of families who read. Since COVID, I can't read.
Oh.
I cannot concentrate. I'm having a terrible time reading. I just can't, there's too many things going, and you would think it's like the ideal time to read. I can't read. But I have this stupid app on my phone that is the stupidest thing on the face of the planet. It's pictures, and it's like a paint by number, but you just tap the color and it puts I don't even have to think about what colors should go here. It's not a coloring book where I get to choose. It tells me the color. It says color number 12 goes here, and I have to tap the color 12. It's mindless. It is absolutely mindless, and I do at least a picture a day. Now, there are some people that I know that would be like, that is mindless, and that would make me crazy, and I can't possibly do that. They would say, Shannon, this is stupid. You're wasting your time doing it. But it's calming to me. It's meditative for me. Now, both of you are runners. To me, that is the seventh ring of hell. I will, and I sometimes can run, not far, but I can't get my mind to get into that meditative place to continue to do it for longer than 5 minutes. And my point here is we all like different things. And if you forced me to be a person who ran every day, I would be an unhappy person. Now, I know that you guys would say that there are things that could be done to help me to enjoy running and to help me to get into that mind space, but I'd have to be willing to do it. And so our assumption that writing should be fun for kids, I think, is outlandish.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to, straw pool of people watching, who here likes to do something you're not good at? I don't know anybody.
No.
So I think it's important that we make it reinforcing for them if they must do it. Take it away if you're at the point where you can take it away, make it a side thing, but reinforce it when you do it and try to make it fun. This is my advice. Yeah?
One quick other thing, I know when you were talking about putting something down on the table and then them having brought, I grew up in third grade. We did shaving cream. We did shaving cream.
Great sensory. Yeah.
I loved it. I you could put I still would love someone to put shaving cream. I mean, I guess I could do myself, but totally loved it. Yeah.
There you go. So all these different things that you can do and add that sensory element to it. We're out of time. We went past time because I was too verbose. But Leah, thank you so much. I think that next month we're having Karen, so we'll see you again in April. Is that accurate?
Yep, that's exactly right.
April, Autism Awareness Month. So we'll look forward to what you bring in that month.
Oh, there's a lot of pressure. Yeah. That's too much pressure. Anyway, thank you guys so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And Nancy, we are so glad that you are here with us today. Next week on the program, we're going to have Kurt Manichek. I don't know if you've been on with him before.
I have not.
He writes the books for teens, Smile and Success, and teaches them social skills through his books and through his courses that help them to be successful getting and keeping jobs. So we're going to look at having him on next week. Also next week on the Thursday show, we have a dentist who's going to be on and talk about dental care for folks on the spectrum during COVID, which I think is super important. And then we also have Dr. Grant Bichet on. And on Monday, as far as I know, we're having Bonnie Yates back to do that 101 crash course on how do you file due process yourself without a lawyer. Should be fascinating. Thank you, everyone. I love, Lucy says, my son is interested in making up jokes lately, so give him a notepad to write them down. What a great thing to do. What a great way to get him interested in writing. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend. Until Monday, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye for now.